Hey guys, tonight we're going on a journey, not just through space, but through an almost unimaginable stretch of time. Imagine you're standing on a vast, open plain, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and distant wood smoke. Above you, the night sky stretches, a velvet blanket studded with diamonds, utterly unmarred by modern light pollution. You can practically taste the ancient quiet. Now, picture yourself trying to navigate that world, not with maps or GPS, but with nothing but the sun, moon, and stars as your guides. You probably wouldn't survive a week, let's be honest. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're feeling up to it, drop your location and local time in the comments below. It's always wild to see where everyone's tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Imagine, if you will, that the very ground beneath your feet isn't just inert dirt, but a massive, incredibly patient library. Each layer, each pebble, each fossilized whisper is a page, holding secrets from epochs long past. And sometimes, just sometimes, if you listen very, very closely, you can almost hear the earth itself sighing, a low, resonant hum of ancient knowledge. Tonight, we're going to tune into one of those incredibly subtle frequencies, a frequency that carries the echoes of a time so remote it makes the Roman Empire look like last Tuesday. We're talking about Germany, about 7,000 years ago, and about a place where the earth held some truly profound secrets, softly whispering of stars and suns from deep within its ancient slumber. Consider the sheer weight of that number, 7,000 years. That's so long ago, the concept of fast food was probably just a particularly speedy berry-picking session, and their version of a smart device was a really interesting rock. And it didn't even have a battery life issue. This was a time before the pyramids of Egypt were even a twinkle in a pharaoh's eye, before Stonehenge was more than a scattered collection of unlifted boulders, and long, long before anyone thought to invent sliced bread, a truly monumental oversight, if you ask me. When we talk about Goseck, we're peeling back so many layers of history that you almost expect to find a dinosaur napping somewhere in the middle. It's a period shrouded in the mist of prehistory, a time when humanity was still figuring out the basics, like how to consistently grow enough food to avoid perpetually hangry villagers. Yet, even then, as people were wrestling with rudimentary tools and the unpredictable whims of nature, they were looking up. They were looking at the same sun, the same moon, the same constellations that drift across our night sky today. And they weren't just admiring the pretty sparkles, like we might on a clear night with a cup of chamomile tea. For them, the sky was the ultimate calendar, the grandest clock, and perhaps the most profound spiritual text. It dictated when to plant, when to harvest, when the long, cold darkness of winter would descend, and when the warmth of summer would return. It was life and death, all written in cosmic light. This mainstream historical fact, that early agricultural societies were intrinsically tied to celestial observations for their very survival, is fundamental to understanding our ancient ancestors. They weren't just passive observers, they were active participants in a grand cosmic dance. So imagine this earth, this vast, silent archive, holding on to these forgotten tales. Goseck, in what is now modern-day Saxony-Anhalt, Germany, was one such tale. It wasn't a towering monument like the later megaliths. It was far more subtle, a gentle embrace of the land itself. Think of it less as a giant, shouting billboard of ancient wisdom and more like a barely audible hum, a faint echo in the soil. It was the earth breathing, holding its breath for millennia, keeping these secrets safe, waiting for the right moment to reveal them. The land itself seemed to have a memory, a geological wisdom that stored the blueprint of human ingenuity, and their profound connection to the cosmos. It's almost as if the planet decided, you know what? I'm going to hold on to this one for a while. Let the humans figure out smartphones first, then they'll appreciate good earthwork. This concept of Earth as a conscious keeper of secrets isn't just poetic. It speaks to the immense natural processes that bury and preserve. Over thousands of years, dust settled, leaves decomposed, floods deposited silt, and generations of human activity built up, slowly, gently, covering over the traces of what came before. It's like the planet was tucking Goseck into a very, very long nap. And during that nap, the whispers of the sun and stars, once so clear and purposeful, became muffled, distorted, until they were almost entirely forgotten, just a faint reverberation in the deep earth. But even in its slumber, the essence of Goseck remained. The precise alignments, the careful shaping of the earth, the silent testimony to human intellect and wonder, they were all still there, waiting. It's a quirky tidbit to consider that for millennia, people walked over this site, plowed fields, built houses, perhaps even had picnics, completely oblivious to the ancient astronomical observatory lying just beneath their feet. It's like having a secret, ancient supercomputer buried in your backyard, and you're still using an abacus for your calculations. The sheer anonymity of such a significant site for so long is truly astounding. The whispers, though faint, were persistent. They spoke of a time when the human mind, unburdened by the distractions of TikTok and instant gratification, was acutely attuned to the rhythms of the natural world. These ancient people, whom we'll get to know better, didn't just see the sun rise. They felt its trajectory, understood its subtle shifts throughout the year, almost as if they were dancing in sync with it. They observed that the sun didn't just pop up in the same spot every morning. Its rising point shifted, moving north in summer, south in winter, a slow, predictable cosmic pendulum. And these shifts were vital. They were the difference between a successful harvest and starvation, between life and the harsh, unforgiving grip of winter. Historians still argue whether these early structures were primarily utilitarian calendars, purely for agricultural planning, or if they were deeply spiritual temples, places where the cosmos and human destiny intertwined in sacred ritual. Perhaps it was both, a seamless blend of the practical and the profound, where the rising sun was not just a signal for planting, but also a divine affirmation, a moment of deep reverence. After all, when your entire existence hinges on the cycles of nature, every sunrise and sunset takes on a far greater significance than just the start or end of your commute. Back then, your commute was probably just from your hut to the berry bush, and you probably had to outrun a badger on the way. So, as we begin our journey into Goseck, let's try to imagine this world, a world before written history, a world guided by the subtle movements of the celestial sphere. A world where the earth itself was an active participant in human understanding, holding on to secrets for millennia, like a wise, old grandparent waiting for their descendants to finally ask the right questions. The whispers of Goseck, muffled by 7,000 years of slumber, are about to be heard again, soft and clear, guiding us back to a time when humanity looked up, not just in wonder, but in absolute necessity. You stir, perhaps a little dreamily, from our last thought, the one about the earth holding secrets. Now, imagine yourself not in the quiet stillness of deep time, but in the relatively recent past, a mere blink in geological terms. You're hovering, not quite literally, over the gentle, rolling agricultural lands of Saxony-Anhalt in eastern Germany. It's the early 1990s, a time when VCRs were still king, and the internet was just a baby trying to stand up. Yet, even then, the ancient world was finding new ways to whisper its forgotten tales. How does a 7,000-year-old secret, buried under centuries of farming and forest, decide it's finally time to resurface? Well, it usually doesn't just pop up like a particularly stubborn dandelion. Oh no. It often takes a little help from above, specifically from an eye in the sky. And in Goseck's case, that eye belonged to a very patient, very observant archaeologist named Otto Brasch. You see, for millennia, the Goseck Circle had been nothing more than a series of very subtle, almost imperceptible undulations in the landscape. Farmers had tilled these fields for generations, probably grumbling about a few patches where the soil was a bit too dry or a bit too wet, never truly guessing they were plowing over a monumental, prehistoric observatory. It was just land. Green in summer, brown in winter, and occasionally covered in a fluffy blanket of snow. A perfectly normal, if slightly lumpy, part of the German countryside. But here's where modern science, and a dash of environmental happenstance, enters the scene. You're looking down from a small aircraft, perhaps a Cessna, or maybe even just a very fancy drone if you want to bring a modern twist to your aerial archaeology adventure. The sun, A low, gentle whisper of light in the sky casts long shadows. And as you gaze across the vast, patchwork quilt of fields, something peculiar catches your eye. It's not a grand, imposing ruin. There are no crumbling stone walls reaching for the heavens like some ancient, forgotten castle. Instead, you see something far more subtle, far more ephemeral: patterns in the crops themselves. Imagine a field of golden wheat, swaying gently in the breeze. Most of it is a uniform, comforting hue. But then, almost imperceptibly, you notice a faint, circular outline where the wheat seems just a touch shorter, a shade lighter, perhaps a little less robust. And just inside that, another fainter circle where the wheat is a tad taller, a shade darker, a little more vigorous. This, my sleepy friend, is the magic of what we call crop marks. It's one of the most elegant, unassuming ways ancient earthworks reveal themselves. You see, when ancient people dug ditches, like the ones that would have surrounded Goseck, and then later filled them in, the soil within those filled-in ditches would retain moisture differently than the undisturbed soil around them. In periods of drought, the crops growing over the old ditches would thrive a little longer, drawing on that extra moisture, appearing greener or taller. Conversely, crops growing over buried stone foundations or compacted surfaces would struggle, appearing stunted or paler. It's like the earth itself is drawing a faint, ghostly outline of what lies beneath, using the vegetation as its ink. Otto Brasch, a pioneer in aerial archaeology, possessed the kind of patience that would make a sloth look like it was rushing. He knew that finding these subtle marks wasn't about flying once and hoping for the best. Oh no. It was about flying repeatedly under different light conditions, at different times of the year, and especially during periods of stress for the crops, like a mild drought. He wasn't just looking, he was waiting for the earth to show its hand. And show its hand it did. On a particular flight in 1991, as the German landscape unfolded beneath him, Brasch spotted it, a distinct, almost perfectly circular arrangement of crop marks in a field near the unassuming village of Goseck. It was too regular, too precise, to be a natural geological feature. This wasn't just a random lumpy bit of field. This was clearly something artificial, something deliberately shaped by human hands, hundreds and thousands of years ago. It was the earth's quiet whisper, finally loud enough to be heard. Now, imagine the gentle hum of the aircraft engine, the quiet click of the camera shutter as Brasch diligently captured these patterns. You're looking at these photographs, perhaps spread out on a large table back in the archaeology lab. At first glance, they might seem like abstract art, a series of concentric circles and lines. But to the trained eye, they screamed, "Ancient monument!" This initial sighting, this ghostly image from above, was the mainstream historical fact that kick-started Goseck's modern story. It wasn't some farmer tripping over a gold pot. It was the methodical application of aerial reconnaissance. But here's a quirky tidbit: even after these clear aerial photographs were taken, some initial reactions were, shall we say, a bit skeptical. You have to remember, this was a massive structure for its time, and finding something of this scale from such an early period was almost unheard of in this region. One could almost hear the quiet, murmured doubts. Are we sure that's not just a fancy irrigation system that went wrong? Or, perhaps a particularly zealous mole had a very ambitious tunneling project? Historians still argue whether these early aerial observations were initially dismissed as natural formations or if their artificial nature was immediately recognized. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle, a blend of cautious optimism and professional skepticism. Once the aerial photos confirmed the presence of something intriguing, the next step was to gently, ever so gently, touch the ground. This wasn't a frantic rush with bulldozers, oh heavens no. This was the patient, meticulous work of archaeological survey. You can almost feel the springy turf beneath your feet as you walk the fields, guided by the aerial images. You're looking for any subtle changes in the ground surface, any telltale fragments of pottery or stone that might lie scattered on the surface, hints of the long-lost lives that once thrived here. And what did they find? Well, at first, it was often just a few unassuming pottery shards, perhaps a flint blade or two, the everyday detritus of ancient life. But as they began to conduct geophysical surveys using instruments that can detect subtle changes in the soil's magnetic properties or electrical resistance, the picture started to become clearer. Imagine gently waving a magic wand over the ground, and a screen lights up, showing you ghost images of buried ditches and post holes. These devices don't dig, they just see beneath the surface, revealing the hidden architecture without disturbing a single clod of earth. It's like giving the ground a very gentle, very scientific ultrasound. These surveys confirmed what the crop marks had hinted at: a monumental, perfectly circular earthwork, roughly 75 meters, about 246 feet, in diameter, enclosed by 2 concentric ditches and a palisade of wooden posts. It was clear this wasn't just a random settlement. The precision, the sheer scale, the deliberate circularity, it all pointed to something far more significant, something with a purpose that transcended the everyday. It was as if the earth, having held its breath for millennia, finally exhaled, revealing the ancient whisper of Goseck. And with that revelation, the stage was set for the careful unearthing of its full, sleepy story. Imagine, if you will, a world before the relentless glow of streetlights and the pervasive hum of digital screens. A world where the velvet canopy of night was not just a backdrop, but a living, breathing, stardusted tapestry that stretched infinitely above you, undimmed by human interference. You stand beneath it, feeling the cool whisper of the ancient air on your skin, and you cannot help but lift your gaze. This isn't just a pretty picture, it was the everyday reality for our ancient ancestors, and it's why their hearts, just like yours, were so profoundly drawn to that celestial ballet above their ancient lands. Why did they gaze upward with such unwavering focus? Why did the movements of distant suns and moons become so utterly central to their very existence? Well, it wasn't just for a good light show, though you can bet those ancient skies put on a spectacular one every night. The reasons were woven deep into the fabric of their daily lives, a complex tapestry of survival, spirituality, and perhaps, simply, wonder. First, and perhaps most pressingly, there was the sheer, undeniable pragmatism of it all. You are an early farmer, perhaps a shepherd, your entire world revolving around the rhythms of growth and decay. Your very survival, the survival of your family, your tribe, depends on a finely tuned understanding of the seasons. When do the rains come? When is it safe to plant those precious seeds? When will the migrating herds pass through, offering a vital source of food? There were no sophisticated weather apps back then, no long-range forecasts, not even a reliable calendar printed on recycled paper. Their calendar was the sky itself, a vast, silent, and incredibly accurate clock. You imagine yourself standing in a quiet field, perhaps just as the first hint of dawn paints the eastern horizon with soft, muted colors. You are watching, waiting, not for a notification on your phone, but for the subtle shift in the sun's rising point along the distant hills. You know, deep in your bones, that when the sun reaches a certain spot, or when a particular star cluster, like the Pleiades, first reappears in the pre-dawn sky after months of absence, it signals something vital. It's a celestial alarm clock, telling you it's time to prepare the soil, to sow the seeds, to anticipate the first tender shoots of grain that will feed your people through the long, lean months ahead. This direct, crucial link between celestial observation and the development of agriculture is a mainstream historical fact, foundational to the rise of settled human societies. It was a matter of life and death, truly. Beyond planting and harvesting, the sky offered an invaluable guide for travel. Imagine navigating vast, trackless landscapes, or even just finding your way home after a long day of hunting. The sun by day, the steadfast North Star by night, the consistent patterns of the constellations, these were their maps, their compasses, their ancient GPS. They didn't have a little voice telling them to turn right in 200 feet, but they had the silent, unwavering guidance of the cosmos. The stars were like permanent signposts, always there, always reliable, if you only knew how to read them. It's hard to imagine, in our age of instant location data, just how profoundly liberating and essential this knowledge must have been. But the sky was more than just a giant calendar or a navigational chart. Oh no, it was so much more. For our ancestors, the heavens were often seen as the very dwelling place of the gods, the spirits, the revered ancestors who had passed beyond the veil. The sun was a powerful deity, bringing warmth and life. The moon, a mysterious, ever-changing entity, influencing tides and perhaps even human moods. The twinkling stars, countless eyes watching from above, or perhaps the scattered dust of cosmic creation. You can almost feel the hush that would fall over a community as an eclipse darkened the sun, or a comet streaked across the night sky. These weren't just astronomical phenomena, they were profound omens, messages from the divine, demanding interpretation and often ritualistic response. Was it a sign of divine displeasure? A prophecy of bounty? A warning of impending disaster? The movements of the celestial bodies were believed to directly influence events on Earth, shaping destiny, dictating fortune. This belief imbued the sky with an almost palpable sense of sacred power, making its observation not just practical, but deeply spiritual. Some ancient cultures, for instance, believed specific constellations weren't just random star patterns but represented mythical heroes, sacred animals, or even vital parts of their creation stories, their very identities etched across the night sky. It's a quirky thought, isn't it, to imagine the constellations as the first great epic poems, told not in words but in light? This profound knowledge of the sky also translated into a significant source of social and political power. Those who could accurately predict the solstices, the equinoxes, or even the subtle shifts in the moon's cycle, held immense authority. They were the shamans, the priests, the wise ones who communed with the cosmos, interpreting its messages for the benefit, or often the control, of their communities. Imagine the awe, the respect, the sheer power of being able to declare, with absolute certainty, the precise moment the longest night would end and the sun would begin its slow return, promising warmth and life anew. Such knowledge wasn't just practical, it was foundational to the very structure of their societies, reinforcing hierarchies and cementing the authority of those who could read the sky. Historians still argue whether the primary motivation for these elaborate sky-watching structures was purely pragmatic, rooted in agricultural needs, or if it was driven more by profound spiritual beliefs and the desire to connect with the divine cosmos. It's a debate that continues to echo through the quiet halls of academia. And finally, perhaps the simplest yet most profound reason of all, pure, unadulterated human curiosity and awe. You lie on your back, perhaps on a cool patch of earth, looking up. The sheer immensity of it all, the endless depths, the glittering pinpricks of light, the majestic sweep of the Milky Way, like a river of starlight flowing across the heavens. It's breathtaking. It inspires questions that echo across millennia. What is out there? What is our place in this vastness? Are we alone? These are questions that still occupy our minds today, even with all our telescopes and space probes. For ancient peoples, without the distractions of modern life, that silent, sparkling expanse must have been their greatest teacher, their most compelling mystery, their ultimate source of wonder. Imagine their equivalent of binge-watching, just, with billions of perfectly arranged, perpetually rerunning episodes of cosmic ballet. No spoilers ever. So, when we talk about Goseck and its ancient alignments, we're not just talking about clever engineering. We're talking about a deep, fundamental human impulse. We're talking about survival, about spirituality, about power, and about that quiet, universal wonder that makes us all, deep down, gaze upward and ask, what if? It was this profound connection to the sky that compelled them, 7,000 years ago, to move earth and timber, to shape the very land beneath their feet, all to better understand the silent, whispering language of the stars. Imagine, if you will, the vast, green canvas of the German countryside, stretching out under a sleepy, benevolent sky. For centuries, the secrets of Goseck lay hidden, not dramatically buried under mountains of earth, but subtly, gently, tucked beneath the everyday rhythms of farming and nature. How, you might wonder, did anyone even begin to suspect that such an ancient marvel lay slumbering just beneath their feet? Well, our journey into peeling back time's layers at Goseck truly begins not with a shovel, but with a camera, specifically, one mounted high above the ground. You see, the earth, in its own quiet way, often whispers its secrets to those who know how to listen, or in this case, how to look from above. During periods of drought, or sometimes just at the right moment in a crop's growth cycle, subtle differences in the soil's moisture retention can cause the vegetation above buried structures to grow differently. Where a ditch once stood, holding more moisture, the crops might be greener and taller. Where a wall or a compacted surface once lay, denying moisture, they might be shorter and yellower. These are called crop marks, and they are like the Earth's very own, incredibly faint, secret messages, only truly legible from an aerial perspective. It's a truly fascinating, almost magical phenomenon, isn't it? Like the land itself is giving a subtle, knowing wink from 7,000 years ago. This is a mainstream historical fact, by the way. Aerial photography, especially during the mid-20th century, revolutionized archaeological discovery, revealing countless sites previously invisible from the ground. So you float above, or perhaps you're simply scrolling through old reconnaissance photos, and suddenly, there it is, a faint, circular ghost in the fields. Not a bold, undeniable line, but a suggestion, a whisper of a pattern that simply shouldn't be there in a natural landscape. This initial aerial survey, a quiet observation from afar, was the very first, gentle step in Goseck's reawakening. It was a moment of quiet intrigue, a hushed question hanging in the air: what lies beneath? Once that initial whisper was heard, the next step was to gently descend from the skies and meet the earth face to face. You can almost feel the anticipation, can't you? But forget the fedora and bullwhip, darling. The real archaeological hero wields a trowel and a very patient bladder. The initial ground surveys are less about dramatic digging and more about systematic, almost meditative observation. You walk the land slowly, methodically, looking for any surface anomaly, a slight rise, a subtle depression, a scattering of ancient pottery shards that might have been brought to the surface by plows over the millennia. It's like being a detective, but your clues are dirt and tiny fragments, and your crime scene is an entire field. Then comes the moment to gently peel back the very first layer. You don't just start digging willy-nilly. Oh no, that would be archaeological heresy. Instead, you establish a meticulous grid system over the site, transforming the rolling field into a giant, invisible piece of graph paper. Every square meter is accounted for, mapped, and documented. This precision ensures that every single discovery, no matter how small, can be accurately plotted in 3 dimensions, allowing archaeologists to reconstruct the ancient landscape with incredible fidelity. It's like building a giant, invisible jigsaw puzzle, where each tiny piece of earth holds a clue. The digging itself is a slow, almost reverent dance with time. You won't see giant excavators roaring across the field. Instead, you'll witness a team of dedicated individuals, often kneeling or lying prone, their faces close to the earth, wielding small hand tools. The archaeologist's best friend is the trusty trowel, not a garden spade, but a small, flat-bladed tool, perfect for scraping away millimeters of soil at a time. Alongside it, you'll find an array of brushes, from stiff bristled ones for tougher earth to soft artist's brushes for the most delicate finds. Sometimes, for truly fragile artifacts, they even use dental picks, working with the precision of a surgeon. This meticulous process is driven by the fundamental principle of stratigraphy, which is just a fancy way of saying layer cake of time. You see, over thousands of years, different layers of soil accumulate. The newest stuff is always at the top, and the oldest, the most ancient, is always at the bottom. By carefully removing one layer at a time, archaeologists can reconstruct the sequence of events at a site. Each layer tells a story about a particular period of time, like turning the pages of an incredibly old book. You might be scraping away modern topsoil, then find a layer from the medieval period, then Roman, and finally, after much patient work, you gently uncover the distinct, darker earth that marks the Neolithic period, the very same soil that ancient hands once disturbed to build Goseck. It's not exactly a tick-tock dance, but the careful removal of a 7,000-year-old pottery shard can generate just as much internal excitement, trust me. As you meticulously clear away the soil, you're not just looking for grand structures. Oh no, the real treasures are often the subtle changes in soil color and texture. Imagine gently scraping away brown earth, only to suddenly encounter a perfectly circular patch of darker, looser soil. This, my friend, is often a post hole, the ghostly imprint of a timber post that once stood upright, supporting a structure, but has long since rotted away. The darker soil is the fill that accumulated in the void left by the decaying wood. At Goseck, identifying these post holes was paramount, as they outlined the precise locations of the massive wooden posts that formed the circles and gateways. It's like finding the very faint footprints of giants who walked here millennia ago. Beyond the ghost imprints of posts, you might uncover fragments of pottery, perhaps a piece of a storage jar, or a bowl used for daily meals. You might find a discarded stone tool, a flint blade, or a ground stone axe head. These aren't just old things, they are tangible links to the people who lived here, offering clues about their technology, their diet, their daily routines. Even tiny fragments of animal bone can tell a story: what animals they hunted or herded, how they butchered them, perhaps even what rituals they performed. And it's not just about the artifacts. Environmental archaeologists, with their own set of gentle, painstaking methods, analyze soil samples for ancient pollen grains, telling us what plants grew here thousands of years ago, what the climate was like, and even what crops they might have cultivated. They might sieve the earth for tiny carbonized seeds, remnants of ancient meals, painting a vivid picture of the prehistoric diet. It's like finding a tiny, forgotten grocery list from 7,000 years ago. The process demands immense patience. You might spend days, even weeks, carefully excavating a single square meter, documenting every speck of soil, every tiny fragment. Every layer is photographed, drawn, and described in meticulous field notes. It's a bit like writing the world's slowest, most detailed diary, but the subject is the very ground beneath your feet. You might even find yourself debating the existential purpose of a particularly stubborn lump of clay for a good 10 minutes before realizing it's just a lump of clay. But that level of scrutiny is exactly what allows for such profound discoveries. Through this gentle, methodical unwrapping of time, archaeologists at Goseck weren't just finding old dirt. They were uncovering the blueprint of an ancient astronomical observatory, a sophisticated calendar built by people who lived 7 millennia ago. They discovered the intricate pattern of ditches and post holes that formed the concentric circles, and crucially, the precise alignments of the gateways. Historians still argue whether the subtle variations in the ditch fills at Goseck represent distinct phases of construction or simply the natural accumulation of millennia of dust and debris. This ongoing debate underscores just how nuanced and challenging the interpretation of such ancient, subtle evidence can be, even with the most painstaking methods. But what is undeniable is the profound commitment to uncovering the truth, layer by fascinating layer. This painstaking, gentle approach ensures that Goseck's buried truths were not just found, but truly understood, allowing us to reconstruct its form, function, and the lives of the people who built it, all from the quiet whispers of the earth itself. It's a testament to human curiosity, and the incredible stories that patience can unlock. Now, with your mind gently attuned to the whispers of forgotten ages, let's truly see the Goseck Circle, not as a blurry dot on a satellite map, but as a living, breathing landscape feature, a silent sentinel that once embraced the sky. Imagine yourself standing at its edge, the air cool and crisp, perhaps a light breeze rustling through ancient leaves that aren't there anymore, but you can almost feel them, can't you? The first thing you notice, if you were to somehow teleport back 7,000 years, isn't a towering monument like the pyramids, or a dramatic stone circle reaching for the clouds. No, Goseck is far more subtle, a gentle embrace woven from the very earth itself. It's a testament to patience and communal effort, not brute force. Picture it, a vast, almost perfectly circular area, stretching about 75 meters, that's roughly 246 feet, or about 2/3 the length of an American football field, if you're trying to visualize it on a modern scale. It's not a structure that shouts for attention, but rather one that draws you in, inviting you to ponder its quiet grandeur. The physical form of Goseck is defined by a series of concentric circles, like ripples spreading out from a stone dropped in a calm pond. The outermost ring would have been a deep, formidable ditch, perhaps 3 meters deep and 5 meters wide. Imagine trying to dig that with just a pointy stick and a strong back, without a single excavator or even a shovel. Your smart watch would be screaming at you to take a break, wouldn't it? This isn't just a simple furrow. This is a serious excavation, a testament to coordinated human effort. The earth dug from this outer trench wasn't just tossed aside willy-nilly. Oh no. It was meticulously piled up to form an earthen bank, a low, rounded wall that would have risen perhaps a meter or two above the surrounding ground. This bank and ditch combination acted as a gentle, yet powerful, boundary, a soft demarcation between the everyday world and the sacred space within. Then, moving inward, you'd encounter a second, slightly smaller ditch, mirroring the first, with another earthen bank nestled between the two. Think of it like a set of ancient, concentric moats, but without the water, though they would have collected rainwater and become muddy, forming a natural barrier. These earthworks, these subtle undulations in the landscape, were the bones of Goseck, carefully shaped by hands that knew the rhythm of the soil. The ditches weren't just for show either. They would have served practical purposes, perhaps for drainage, or as a boundary to keep livestock out, or even just to define a clear, ritualistic path for those approaching the inner sanctum. Historians still argue whether the inner ditch was primarily for defense or served a more symbolic, perhaps even ritualistic, purpose, defining sacred space. Was it a subtle warning, or a gentle invitation to contemplation? Probably both, knowing how ancient minds worked. Within these earthen rings lay the true heart of Goseck, a circular palisade, a wall constructed entirely of timber. Imagine standing inside, looking up at a towering fence made of sturdy oak or ash logs, each one carefully selected, debarked, and driven deep into the ground. These weren't flimsy saplings. These were substantial tree trunks, forming a continuous, imposing barrier. The sheer effort involved in felling these trees, transporting them without wheels or draft animals, and then erecting them with only basic tools, is mind-boggling. It's like building a cathedral, but out of wood and without a single nail, just pure, unadulterated Neolithic ingenuity. You can almost hear the rhythmic thud of mallets on timber, the grunts of exertion, the communal songs that must have accompanied such a colossal undertaking. This timber palisade would have stood perhaps 3 to 4 meters high, a smooth, wooden wall that created a sense of enclosure, separating the inside from the outside. It wasn't just a fence, it was a canvas for light and shadow, a silent observer of the heavens. Sunlight would have dappled through any small gaps, casting shifting patterns on the ground, changing with the time of day and the season. And speaking of light, this wooden embrace wasn't entirely solid. It was thoughtfully punctuated by gateways, 3 of them, positioned with an almost unbelievable precision. Picture these gateways, wide openings in the wooden wall, perhaps framed by larger, more prominent posts, inviting passage. One gateway faced southeast, another southwest, and a third pointed north. These weren't just convenient entrances and exits. They were the very eyes of Goseck, the precise points through which the sun's rays would pierce the circular embrace at key moments of the year. The southeast gate, for instance, would have framed the sunrise on the winter solstice, a moment of profound significance for these ancient peoples, a gentle kiss from the returning sun. The southwest gate would have marked the sunset on that same shortest day, completing the celestial embrace. The northern gate, while not directly tied to a solar event, likely played a role in observing the moon or other celestial bodies, or perhaps served as a ceremonial entrance for specific rituals. It's like they built a giant, wooden camera obscura, perfectly aligned to capture the celestial dance. You can almost hear the soft creak of the ancient timbers as the wind would have whispered through them, carrying secrets from one gateway to another. The interior of the circle, within the embrace of the timber palisade, would have been a flattened, cleared space, perhaps covered with packed earth or a layer of gravel. It wasn't cluttered with buildings or structures. Its beauty lay in its emptiness, its openness to the sky. It was a stage, ready for observation, ceremony, or simply quiet contemplation. Imagine the feeling of being inside this space, the outside world subtly muted by the earthen banks and the wooden wall, the sky above vast and unobstructed, framed by the perfect circle of the palisade. It would have felt both protected and exposed, a paradox that perfectly captures the human relationship with the cosmos. So, while Goseck lacked the dramatic verticality of Stonehenge, its power lay in its subtle, horizontal presence, its intimate connection to the earth from which it was born. It was a circular hug of the landscape, a deliberate shaping of the ground to mirror the movements of the heavens. It wasn't built to impress with sheer height, but to connect with profound precision. It was an earthwork embrace, a silent, powerful form reaching not up to the sky in defiance, but towards it, in reverence and understanding. The ingenuity was in the scale and the accuracy, achieved with nothing more than stone tools, antler picks, and the collective will of a community. It's almost as if they were saying, "We don't need fancy lasers or GPS. We've got teamwork and a really good eye for the sun." Now let your mind drift back with us, deeper into the quiet, chilly dawn of a winter long, long ago, perhaps 7 millennia past. You're standing, or perhaps kneeling, within the gentle embrace of the Goseck Circle. The air bites at your exposed skin, crisp and clear, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and distant wood smoke. Above you, the sky is a vast, inky canvas, still dusted with the last, fading whispers of stars, like tiny diamonds reluctantly winking out as the eastern horizon begins to lighten. There's a profound silence, broken only by the soft rustle of wind through ancient grasses, or perhaps the almost imperceptible shiver of a nearby tree. You pull your simple animal hide cloak tighter, your breath fogging in the pre-dawn chill, and you wait. You, and perhaps a small gathering of others, wrapped in a shared, profound anticipation. This isn't just any morning, of course. This is the morning. The morning of the winter solstice. The longest night has just passed, stretching its shadowy fingers further than any other throughout the year, a deep, comforting blanket for some, perhaps a source of quiet anxiety for others. But now, that long, dark vigil is almost over. And Goseck, this ancient, sleeping sentinel of earth and timber, is about to perform its most famous, most profound trick. Its grand, silent affirmation of the universe's reliable rhythm. As the first sliver of light, a faint, pearly glow, begins to paint the eastern sky, you instinctively turn towards Goseck's southeastern gateway. This isn't one of those grand, imposing stone arches you might see in later, more dramatic structures. No, these are humble, yet precisely placed, openings in the circular earthwork, likely marked by sturdy timber posts that have long since returned to the soil. But their absence now doesn't diminish their ancient purpose. They were the key. The sight lines. The silent, wooden hands that pointed the way. You can almost feel the presence of those long-gone timbers, guiding your gaze even now. The light intensifies from a faint pearl to a soft rose, then a gentle, spreading gold. And then it happens. A single, pure, undiluted beam of sunlight, the very first kiss of the returning sun, pierces the exact center of that southeastern gateway. It's not a sudden, dramatic burst, but a slow, deliberate caress. The light stretches, a golden arrow, across the interior of the circle, tracing a path that the ancient builders had meticulously, painstakingly, laid out millennia ago. It's a moment of breathtaking simplicity, yet profound power. It is, quite literally, the sun announcing its return, its slow, steady climb back to dominance over the coming months. Imagine the feeling that would have washed over you, over those ancient people, as that golden beam stretched across the frost-kissed ground. Relief, certainly. A deep, primal understanding that the cycle continued, that the darkness would recede, and the warmth and light would return. For people whose very survival depended on the rhythms of nature, on knowing when to plant, when to harvest, when to prepare for the lean times, this was not mere spectacle. This was the universe's most reliable clock, reset. Their original, organic GPS, telling them exactly where they were in the grand cosmic journey. No need for satellites or confusing apps, just a perfectly placed dirt mound and some well-chosen sticks. Honestly, sometimes you wonder if they had it easier in some ways. Less screen time, anyway. This alignment, the winter solstice sunrise through the southeastern gateway, is the cornerstone of Goseck's fame. It's what first truly illuminated the circle's purpose when it was rediscovered. It showed that Goseck wasn't just a random circular ditch. It was a purpose-built observatory, a calendrical device of astonishing precision for its age. Indeed, mainstream historical understanding confirms that the winter solstice was a crucial marker for many ancient cultures across the globe, often symbolizing rebirth, renewal, and the triumph of light over darkness. Goseck stands as one of the earliest and clearest examples of a structure designed specifically to track this pivotal moment. It speaks to a shared human need to understand, to predict, and to feel connected to the vastness of the cosmos. The precision involved here is truly mind-boggling, isn't it? To align these earthworks and timber posts with such accuracy, without the benefit of written plans, complex surveying tools, or even a basic understanding of geometry as we know it today. It suggests an incredible depth of observational knowledge, passed down perhaps through generations, meticulously refined. Perhaps they used simple shadow casting techniques, or observed the same star rising at the same point over many years. Or maybe, just maybe, they had a secret, ancient protractor. Who knows? It's fun to imagine them debating the exact angle, squabbling over a degree here or there, like ancient project managers trying to meet a deadline. No, Bernd, a little more to the left. We need that sunbeam perfectly centered, or the crops will fail, and we'll all starve. No pressure. Now, some might wonder if this was just a happy accident, a fortunate coincidence of a circular ditch. But the consistent alignment, not just for the winter solstice but for other key solar events, which we'll softly touch upon later, don't you worry, strongly argues against that. This was intentional. This was design. This was the linear pottery culture, those quiet, industrious people we spoke of earlier, making a profound statement about their place in the universe. They weren't just living on the land, they were living with the sky. The winter solstice alignment at Goseck isn't just about the sun's position, it's about the sun's return. It marks the turning point, the moment when the days, imperceptibly at first, begin to lengthen again. For an agricultural society, this was vital information. It told them that the deep winter, the time of scarcity, would eventually give way to spring, to planting, to abundance. It was a promise, etched in earth and light. It was the universe's way of saying, "Hang in there, folks, brighter days are coming." A cosmic motivational poster, if you will. And what about the other gateways? While the southeastern one is the star of the winter solstice show, there's also a northwestern gateway, directly opposite. As the sun's beam enters the southeast, it would have illuminated a path towards the northwest. This symmetrical arrangement further emphasizes the deliberate nature of the construction. It's like having two perfectly aligned doors in a very large, very ancient, very important calendar. A quirky, perhaps fringe, tidbit related to Goseck's winter alignment is the theory that the exact spot where the solstice sunbeam fell within the circle might have marked the location of a central altar or a specific ritualistic post, perhaps even a sacred fire, though no definitive archaeological evidence has been found to confirm this specific use. It's easy to imagine a flickering flame, carefully tended, catching the first golden rays, symbolizing the rekindling of life and hope after the long darkness. Perhaps the smoke from that fire carried prayers and thanks upwards, mingling with the crisp morning air. Think of the rituals that might have unfolded around this moment. Were there psalms? Chants? Offerings of gratitude for the sun's return? Did the community gather, wrapped in silence, or did they celebrate with joyous shouts as the light touched the ground? Historians still argue whether the Goseck Circle was primarily an astronomical observatory for practical calendrical purposes, or if its function was deeply intertwined with complex religious ceremonies and social gatherings, perhaps acting as a sacred space for the community's most important spiritual events. Was it a scientific instrument, a temple, or perhaps both? The line between science and spirituality was certainly far blurrier in those ancient times, wasn't it? You can almost hear the quiet debates amongst modern scholars, late at night, poring over the data, trying to piece together the full picture from whispers in the earth. The gentle kiss of the midwinter sun upon Goseck's gateways wasn't just a fleeting moment. It was the culmination of a year's observation, a testament to human ingenuity, and a profound connection to the cosmic ballet above. It was a moment of deep comfort, a reassurance that even in the darkest times, the light would always faithfully return. And Goseck, the sleepy circle, was there to mark it, year after ancient year, a silent, earthen witness to the enduring dance of sun and sky. You've drifted into the quiet contemplation of Goseck's famous midwinter embrace, the moment the sun, a shy visitor, kissed the earth through those ancient southern gates. But imagine for a moment that this wasn't Goseck's only trick, its only whispered secret. Oh no, this old circle was far more ambitious. It wasn't just a winter warmer. It was a full spectrum, year-round solar observatory, quietly marking the sun's entire gentle journey across the sky, from its highest, most exuberant peak in summer to those perfectly balanced days of spring and autumn. Picture yourself there again, not in the crisp bite of winter, but as the days begin their long stretch, warming the earth and waking the sleepy seeds. You feel the sun's strength grow, its arc climbing higher and higher each day, until you reach that glorious zenith, the summer solstice. This is the longest day of the year, when the sun holds court in the sky for what feels like an eternity, pouring its golden light over everything. And Goseck, in its quiet wisdom, knew this moment too. As the winter solstice was marked by the southern gates, the summer solstice would have seen the sun rising and setting through the northern gates, albeit less dramatically, less starkly, than its winter counterpart. It was a more subtle alignment, perhaps, a gentle affirmation of life's abundance, rather than a hopeful plea for its return. You can almost feel the warmth on your skin, hear the buzzing of ancient insects, and smell the rich earth as crops grow tall around you. The sun, a tireless painter, casts long, dancing shadows in the early morning and late evening, but at midday, it hovers almost directly overhead, shrinking shadows to mere suggestions beneath your feet. For the people of the Linear Pottery Culture, this wasn't just a nice day for a picnic, though perhaps they had those too, minus the checkered blankets and pre-packaged sandwiches. This was the peak of their agricultural year, the moment when their hard work was literally bathed in the maximum possible sunlight, coaxing their grains and vegetables to ripen. Knowing this precise moment, tracking the sun's highest climb, would have been paramount for managing their harvests, for understanding the rhythms of the very land that sustained them. It's like having a celestial alarm clock telling you, "Okay, folks, maximum growing time initiated. Get those hoes ready." But Goseck's celestial calendar wasn't just about the extremes. It was about balance, too. Imagine the days when the light and dark held equal sway, those fleeting moments in spring and autumn when day and night are precisely the same length. These are the equinoxes, and Goseck, ever the meticulous timekeeper, had gateways perfectly aligned for these moments as well. As you stand within the circle on the vernal, spring, equinox, you'd watch the sun rise directly through the eastern gate, painting the sky with soft, hopeful hues. And as it set, it would dip below the horizon through the western gate, a gentle, symmetrical farewell. This wasn't a dramatic, pinpoint beam like the winter solstice. It was a broader, more encompassing alignment, a testament to the Earth's steady wobble and the sun's predictable path. The spring equinox, for these ancient farmers, was a signal, a cosmic cue that the time for serious planting had arrived. The earth was warming, the days were lengthening, and the promise of new life was everywhere. It was a moment of preparation, of hopeful toil. You'd feel the crispness in the air, the scent of damp soil, and the subtle shift in the light that promised growth. It's a bit like when you finally decide to tackle that spring cleaning, but instead of dusting shelves, you're preparing vast fields for the entire community's survival. No pressure. Then, as the year slowly turns, and the long, lazy days of summer begin to shorten, you'd find yourself back at Goseck for the autumnal equinox. Again, the sun would rise and set precisely through the eastern and western gates. But this time, the feeling would be different. The air would carry a hint of chill, the leaves on the ancient trees just beyond the circle might be starting to turn, and the scent would be of harvest, of abundance, and perhaps, of the quiet preparations for winter's rest. This was the time for gathering in, for storing, for celebrating the bounty the sun had provided. It was their ancient equivalent of a Thanksgiving feast, though probably with more gruel and less awkward family conversations. Historians still gently ponder whether the primary motivation for these precise equinox alignments was purely pragmatic, a farmer's almanac writ large, or if they held an equally profound spiritual or ceremonial weight, marking moments of cosmic balance and renewal. Perhaps it was both, inextricably woven into the fabric of their lives. After all, when your survival depends entirely on the cycles of nature, the practical and the spiritual often become one. What's truly fascinating, and perhaps a little bit quirky, is how these ancient people might have achieved such precision for the equinoxes. Unlike the solstices, where the sun appears to pause at its extreme northern or southern points before reversing direction, the equinoxes are about a precise moment of balance, where the sun crosses the celestial equator. It's not a pause, but a point on a curve. Some theories suggest that they might have used incredibly subtle shadow tracking methods within the Goseck Circle itself, perhaps marking the exact length or position of a shadow cast by a central post or specific timber at midday, meticulously noting when those shadows achieved a precise, symmetrical pattern. Imagine the patience, the quiet observation, the communal effort involved in waiting for that exact moment, day after day, year after year, until the pattern emerged with irrefutable clarity. It's like watching paint dry, but for generations, and with the fate of your entire civilization riding on the precise timing. So, you see, Goseck wasn't a one-trick pony. It was a comprehensive solar calendar, a silent, grand celestial clock that tracked the sun's full arc across the sky. From the hopeful return of light at the winter solstice to the bountiful peak of summer, and through the balanced transitions of spring and autumn, Goseck was their guide. It provided predictability in a world that must have often felt chaotic and unpredictable. It allowed them to plan their agricultural year with remarkable accuracy, a mainstream historical fact that underscores the sheer ingenuity of early Neolithic societies. Without such precise knowledge, their very survival would have been a much more precarious gamble. You can almost feel the gentle rhythm of their lives, dictated by these celestial movements. The steady progression of days, marked by the sun's journey through Goseck's gates, would have provided a profound sense of security and connection to the cosmos. It wasn't just about farming, it was about understanding their place in the grand scheme of things, about aligning their earthly existence with the predictable dance of the heavens. They didn't have apps to tell them the weather or calendars on their phones. They had Goseck, and the quiet, patient wisdom of generations. It makes you wonder if, in our modern world of instant information, we've lost a little bit of that deep, visceral connection to the subtle whispers of the sun and stars. Perhaps a little less scrolling and a little more gazing would do us all some good. Imagine, if you will, a clock without gears, without ticking hands, without a single whisper of digital numbers. You're standing, perhaps, right in the heart of Goseck, feeling the cool earth beneath your bare feet, and you realize that the very world around you is a silent, grand celestial clock. It's not just about marking the longest or shortest day, it's about understanding the profound, almost spiritual, rhythm of time itself, as measured by the sun and perhaps the stars. Think about it, for these ancient folk, time wasn't a relentless rush of seconds and minutes. It was a slow, deliberate dance, marked by the shifting light, the changing seasons, and the gentle arc of the sun across the sky. Goseck, with its subtle, earth-sculpted gateways, was their magnificent chronometer, their ancient calendar, etched not in stone, but in the very landscape. You don't need to wind it up, you just need to watch. And watching they did, with a patience that we, with our smart watches and instant notifications, can barely comprehend. Remember those carefully positioned gateways we talked about? Well, these weren't just decorative archways for a particularly dramatic entrance to a very old party. Oh no. These were the subtle, yet incredibly precise, markers of Goseck's true purpose. As the sun began its ascent each day, its light would spill through one of these openings, painting a moving tableau of shadow and illumination across the inner circle. And as the days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, the exact point where that light first touched the inner sanctum would shift ever so slightly. It's like a very, very slow-motion laser show, designed by the cosmos itself. You see, the ancient observers at Goseck weren't just casually glancing up. They were meticulously tracking the sun's journey, day after day, year after year. They understood that the sun's path across the sky isn't static. It rises and sets at different points on the horizon throughout the year, tracing a vast, invisible arc. Goseck's gates, particularly those aligned with the winter and summer solstices, acted as fixed points, like the 12 on a clock face, but for the sun's annual journey. When the sun's first rays kissed the exact center of the southeastern gate on the shortest day of the year, they knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that winter had truly arrived. It was their celestial ding-dong, the year has turned moment. But Goseck wasn't a one-trick pony, just for the solstices. Oh no. Its genius lay in its ability to mark the full sweep of the year. The other gateways, particularly those pointing towards the equinoxes, those magical days in spring and autumn when day and night are almost perfectly balanced, allowed them to track the journey in between. Imagine the sense of anticipation, watching the sunrise creep closer and closer to that equinox gate, knowing that when it finally aligned, it was time for spring planting, or perhaps the autumn harvest. It was a natural, organic calendar, intimately tied to the rhythms of the earth they lived on. You could almost hear the collective sigh of relief, or perhaps the cheer, as the sun confirmed their predictions. Well, looks like we're not going to accidentally plant potatoes in December this year, thanks to Goseck, you might imagine someone saying. This systematic observation of the sun, moon, and stars for calendrical purposes is a mainstream historical fact, observed in various forms across countless ancient cultures globally. From the megalithic structures of the British Isles to the intricate observatories of the Maya, ancient peoples universally understood the critical link between celestial movements and their earthly survival. At Goseck, this understanding manifested as a tangible, earth and timber structure that served as a communal timepiece. It wasn't just for a few wise elders. It was for everyone, a shared understanding of when to plant, when to harvest, when to gather, and when to prepare for the long, cold nights. Imagine trying to run a society without knowing when winter was coming. You'd probably end up with a lot of very cold, very hungry people. And nobody wants to be that guy who forgot to stock up on berries because he lost track of the season. Now, while the primary focus of Goseck's clockwork seems to be the sun, some archaeoastronomers, with their keen eyes and even keener calculations, suggest that its alignments might have gone beyond just our nearest star. This is where we drift into a slightly more quirky or fringe tidbit. Could the builders of Goseck have been tracking certain constellations or prominent stars as well? Perhaps, as the light faded each evening, they would gaze through the timber palisades, noting the rising or setting of particular celestial bodies. Imagine, for instance, a specific bright star, say Sirius, appearing precisely above a certain point on the outer ditch at a particular time of year, signaling another important agricultural or ritualistic moment. It's a fascinating thought, isn't it? That Goseck wasn't just a sundial, but a full-spectrum cosmic observatory, quietly charting the movements of the entire night sky. It's like having a watch that tells you the time, the date, and also when your favorite constellation is going to make its grand entrance. Talk about an upgrade. Of course, historians still argue whether the precision observed in Goseck's alignments was solely for practical calendrical functions, like telling them when to sow their seeds, or if these precise alignments also served deeper, symbolic, or even spiritual purposes. Was it just a tool, or was it also a sacred space where the divine order of the cosmos was made manifest on earth? Did they gather there not just to know when to plant, but to feel a profound connection to the vast, unknowable universe above them? The truth, as is often the case with ancient mysteries, probably lies somewhere in the delicate balance of both. It's hard to imagine something so grand and so carefully constructed being only utilitarian. It feels like it holds more. So, how did this sky clock impact their daily rhythms? Profoundly. It dictated when the first furrows were plowed into the earth, when the seeds were gently placed, and when the ripe harvest was gathered. It guided their communal feasts, their rituals of thanks, and their preparations for the leaner months. Life, for these linear pottery people, was intrinsically woven into the fabric of the seasons, and Goseck was the loom upon which that fabric was expertly crafted. Without it, they'd be like modern commuters without a timetable, just kind of wandering around hoping for a bus to show up eventually. Imagine the elders patiently observing, perhaps teaching the younger generations the subtle shifts of light and shadow, passing down the knowledge of this celestial timepiece. It wasn't just a structure, it was a living, breathing library of cosmic wisdom, passed down through generations. The very act of observing and understanding these cycles would have fostered a deep connection to their environment, a profound respect for the natural world. You wouldn't need an app to tell you the weather. The sky clock would whisper its secrets, and you'd listen. And probably dress accordingly. No one wants to be caught in an unexpected ancient German downpour without a good wool cloak. The quiet grandeur of Goseck as a celestial clock is truly humbling. No gears, no electricity, just an understanding of the sun's gentle dance and the earth's patient embrace. It was a tool, yes, but also a monument to human ingenuity and an enduring testament to our species' timeless fascination with the heavens. It allowed them to live in harmony with the natural world, to anticipate its changes, and to thrive within its rhythm. And all of this, simply by watching the quiet, sleepy alignments of light and shadow. Now, as you drift deeper into the ancient landscape, let's turn our gaze from the silent, watchful earthwork itself to the very hands that shaped it, the minds that conceived of such a grand, skyward-gazing dream. You might imagine a bustling city, full of architects with blueprints and engineers with complex calculations. But that's not quite right. Instead, picture small, determined communities, nestled amongst the nascent fields of wheat and barley, living lives intricately woven with the rhythms of the sun and soil. These were the people known to archaeologists as the Linear Pottery Culture, or LBK for short, because, well, they made pottery, and it had lines on it. Very creative naming, isn't it? It's almost as if the archaeologists were having a particularly sleepy day themselves when they came up with that one. Imagine, if you will, stepping back a breathtaking 7 millennia. You find yourself not in a land of hunter-gatherers, forever following the migrations of beasts, but in a world where humanity was just beginning to put down roots, quite literally. The linear pottery culture didn't just stumble upon farming. They were pioneers, the very vanguard of the agricultural revolution sweeping across Europe. This is a mainstream historical fact that reshaped the continent. They brought with them domesticated grains and animals, wheat, barley, cattle, pigs, goats, sheep, and the knowledge to cultivate them, spreading a new way of life from the fertile plains of Hungary and Slovakia westward into what is now Germany, France, and beyond. They weren't just farmers. They were the first true settlers in many of these regions, transforming forests into fields, and temporary camps into permanent villages. You see them, perhaps, emerging from the misty dawn, their tools simple yet effective, polished stone axes for felling trees, flint sickles for harvesting grain, and digging sticks for preparing the soil. Their days were long, certainly, filled with the demanding labor of cultivating crops, tending livestock, and constructing their distinctive longhouses, massive timber structures, sometimes stretching over 40 meters, housing multiple families, perhaps even entire extended clans. These weren't your cozy, single-family abodes. Think of them more like ancient apartment complexes, but made of wood and mud, and probably smelling a bit more like wet earth and livestock. It's a quirky tidbit, but these longhouses are a hallmark of the linear pottery culture, serving not just as homes but as centers for communal life, craft production, and storage. You can almost hear the gentle murmur of voices, the rhythmic thump of a grinding stone, the lowing of cattle just outside the timber walls. But their diligence wasn't solely focused on the immediate demands of survival. Their minds, too, were engaged, looking beyond the furrowed field to the vast, shimmering expanse above. The Goseck Circle wasn't built by accident, nor was it a spontaneous burst of creativity on a lazy Sunday afternoon. It was the product of careful observation, shared knowledge, and a remarkable understanding of the celestial dance. You might think, how did they manage such precision without any of our fancy gadgets? And that's a perfectly valid question. But remember, their lives were intimately connected to the natural world. They lived and died by the sun's warmth, the rain's bounty, the length of the day. The sky wasn't just a pretty backdrop, it was their calendar, their clock, their guide. Imagine a group of elders, perhaps, or those particularly attuned to the cycles of the sky, gathering at dusk, pointing out the slow shift of a star, the precise moment the sun dipped below the horizon at a specific point on the distant hills. They would have noticed patterns, subtle changes over days, weeks, and seasons. This wasn't abstract science for them, it was utterly practical. Knowing when to plant, when to harvest, when to prepare for the long, cold slumber of winter, these were matters of life and death for their nascent agricultural communities. Goseck, then, becomes less a mysterious monument and more a pragmatic tool, a giant, fixed observatory built into the very earth they tilled. Yet, to call them purely pragmatic would be to miss a crucial dimension of their lives. These were people deeply connected to the spiritual world, to the forces they could not control but could only observe and perhaps, through ritual, influence. So, while Goseck served as a precise celestial clock, it was almost certainly more than that. Historians still argue whether the astronomical precision of sites like Goseck was solely for agricultural timing, or if it also served a profound ritualistic purpose, marking sacred times for ceremonies, gatherings, and perhaps even offerings to unseen powers. Was it a giant sundial for planting, or a cosmic altar for connecting with the divine? Most likely it was both, inextricably intertwined in their worldview. The building of Goseck itself speaks volumes about their social organization. This wasn't a task for one family, or even one village. It required collective effort, coordination, and a shared vision. Imagine the sheer muscle power involved, digging those deep, circular ditches with antler picks and wooden shovels, hauling timber posts, massive oak trunks, into place, aligning them with painstaking care. You can almost hear the grunts of effort, the communal chants, the steady rhythm of work that binds a community together. It wasn't like a modern construction site with heavy machinery and a foreman barking orders. It was a slow, deliberate dance with the earth, a testament to their patience and perseverance. They didn't have earth movers, just strong backs and an unshakable belief in the importance of their project. It really puts your last DIY project into perspective, doesn't it? Trying to hang a picture straight feels like rocket science compared to building a 75-meter-wide earthwork circle aligned to the solstices. And these people, the diligent hands and minds of the linear pottery culture, weren't just focused on grand astronomical projects. Their daily rhythms were peaceful, harmonious with the land. You can imagine the smell of wood smoke from their hearths, the distant bleating of sheep, the happy chatter of children playing amongst the longhouses. They crafted beautiful pottery, often decorated with those distinctive linear patterns that give them their name, and wove textiles from flax. They were skilled flint knappers, creating sharp tools and weapons. Their lives, while undoubtedly hard by modern standards, were rich in community, purpose, and a profound connection to their environment. They weren't just surviving, they were building, creating, and observing. The mystery of the linear pottery culture isn't about their existence, but about the nuances of their lives, their beliefs, and the precise reasons why they poured such immense effort into structures like Goseck. We don't have their written records, their personal diaries, or their ancient YouTube channels explaining their motivations. We only have the whispers from the earth, the fragments of pottery, the outlines of their longhouses, and the silent, enduring alignments of their colossal sky clocks. But these whispers are enough to tell us that they were far from primitive. They were intelligent, organized, and deeply insightful, capable of feats of engineering and astronomical observation that still impress us today. They had a dream, a vision of understanding their place in the cosmos, and they painstakingly, diligently, brought that dream to life, one carefully placed timber and one precisely aligned ditch at a time. Imagine, if you will, waking up not to the insistent chirping of an alarm clock, but to the gentle, insistent chirping of actual birds, and the slow, golden creep of dawn across your thatched roof. You stir on your simple, probably straw-filled sleeping mat, the cool morning air a soft kiss on your skin. This isn't just any morning, it's a morning 7 millennia ago, and you are one of the linear pottery people, nestled in the shadow of the colossal Goseck Circle. There's no snooze button on the sun, you see, so when it rises, you rise. And in this ancient world, the sun isn't just a light source, it's your calendar, your clock, and perhaps, your quiet, guiding deity. Your first breath of the day is thick with the scent of damp earth, wood smoke from last night's embers, and the faint, sweet smell of growing grain. Outside, the world is already beginning to hum. You can hear the lowing of cattle, the bleating of sheep, and the distant, rhythmic thud of someone already grinding grain. The ancient world's most relentless percussion section, perhaps. You pull on your simple woven tunic, probably made from flax, and step out of your longhouse. These remarkable structures, often over 30 meters long, were the heart of their communities. They were built from massive timber posts, with walls of wattle and daub, and roofs of heavy thatch. Historians still argue whether these massive longhouses sheltered single extended families or multiple, distinct family units under one very long, very thatched roof. Either way, they were bustling hubs of activity, echoing with the sounds of communal life. As you emerge, the Goseck Circle itself looms in the distance, a silent, monumental presence on the horizon. It's not just a far-off landmark, it's intrinsically woven into the very fabric of your daily existence. Its earthworks, though perhaps not as sharply defined as in its pristine state, are still a constant, reassuring curve against the sky. You walk towards the communal hearth, where a fire is coaxed back to life, its smoke curling lazily upwards, carrying the promise of warmth and sustenance. Your hands, calloused and strong, reach for a chunk of coarsely ground bread, perhaps a remnant from yesterday, or maybe even a fresh, flatbread-like creation, cooked directly on the hot stones. There's no fancy butter or jam, just the earthy taste of the grain itself. Your day is a symphony of rhythm and repetition, dictated by the seasons and the sun's silent command. Most of your waking hours are spent in the fields, cultivating the crops that sustain your community. You trudge out with your simple digging sticks and hoes, made of sharpened wood or flint, to tend to the wheat and barley that stretch in green waves across the fertile lush soil. You feel the cool earth between your fingers, the warmth of the sun on your back, and the satisfying ache of honest labor in your muscles. It's a far cry from tapping on a glowing screen all day, isn't it? Though, to be fair, they probably didn't have to deal with endless buffering either, so maybe it evens out. Beyond the fields, there are animals to tend. The gentle lowing of cattle, the nervous bleating of sheep, the grunting of pigs, these sounds are as much a part of your daily soundscape as the wind rustling through the leaves. You help herd them to fresh pastures, milk the cows, and collect wool from the sheep. Every task is interconnected, every effort contributing directly to the survival and well-being of your small, close-knit world. There's no gig economy here, just the steady, predictable flow of agricultural life. Back at the longhouse, the women and older children are equally busy. You might hear the rhythmic scrape of a stone grinder, turning grain into flour, a process that likely contributed to very strong jaws and, let's be honest, probably a lot of grit in their food. Or perhaps the soft clack of a loom as someone weaves fabric for clothing or blankets. The distinctive linear pottery for which your culture is named is everywhere, pots for cooking, jars for storage, bowls for eating. Each piece, though often decorated with elegant incised lines, is primarily functional, designed for the practicalities of daily life. Nobody's really worried about matching their serving dishes to their decor. Children, too, have their roles, though their days are also filled with the simple joys of play. You might see them chasing each other through the fields, splashing in a nearby stream, or mimicking the adults with miniature tools. Their laughter, light and free, carries on the breeze, a constant reminder of the future of your community. The elders, with their weathered faces and knowing eyes, sit by the fire, sharing stories, passing down knowledge, and perhaps occasionally grumbling about how the young ones just don't appreciate a good flint axe anymore. The Goseck Circle, though not a place of daily residence, is always there, a silent, powerful anchor. Its gateways, precisely aligned with the solstices and equinoxes, aren't just astronomical markers. They likely structured the very rhythm of communal life. Imagine the anticipation as the winter solstice approaches, the community gathering at the northeastern gateway, waiting for the sun's first ray to pierce the darkness, signaling the turning of the year, the promise of longer days, and the renewal of life. These weren't just scientific observations. They were deeply spiritual moments, reinforcing the community's connection to the cosmos. Perhaps, at certain times of the year, the circle became a gathering place for more than just astronomical observation. Maybe it was where disputes were settled, where important decisions were made, or where ceremonies were held to bless the harvest or mourn the dead. The fact that early musical instruments, such as bone flutes, have been found at linear pottery culture sites suggests that music and communal gatherings, perhaps even dancing, played a role in their daily and ritual lives, adding another layer to the sensory tapestry of their existence near the Great Circle. Imagine the haunting notes of a bone flute carrying on the evening air, echoing across the silent fields. As the sun begins its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, the community starts to wind down. The last tasks are completed, the animals are secured, and the smoke from the communal fires grows thicker, carrying the aroma of cooking food. Perhaps a stew made from wild greens and a bit of dried meat, or a simple porridge. You gather with your family and neighbors around the crackling fire, sharing stories of the day, recounting old legends, or simply enjoying the quiet companionship. There's no television, no internet, no endless stream of content. Your entertainment is each other, the shared warmth of the fire, and the vast, star-studded canvas of the night sky. And as the stars begin to prickle through the darkening sky, familiar constellations slowly emerge, patterns that your ancestors have known for generations. You might look towards the Goseck Circle one last time, its dark silhouette a comforting presence against the glittering expanse. It reminds you of your place in the universe, of the enduring cycles of life and death, and of the quiet, profound wisdom of those who built this ancient marvel. Then you retreat into the longhouse, the sounds of the night, crickets chirping, an owl hooting, the distant murmur of the wind, lull you into a deep, dreamless sleep, ready to rise again with the sun, ready to continue the peaceful, rhythmic dance of life in Goseck's enduring shadow. You've been lulled by the whisper of Goseck, haven't you? Its ancient alignments, so precise, so deliberate, like a celestial secret etched into the very earth. But now, as your mind drifts a little further into the past, you might find yourself asking a very practical question, one that tickles the edges of your sleepy awareness. How? How did these ancient folks, without laser levels or even, like, a decent spirit level, manage to build something so astronomically accurate 7,000 years ago? It's almost as if they had some secret ancient cheat code, isn't it? Well, let's gently pull back the veil on the sheer, quiet ingenuity of Goseck's early engineers, the linear pottery culture people. Picture them, not as grand architects with blueprints rolled out on papyrus, but as deeply observant, incredibly patient, and surprisingly effective earth movers and timber setters. Their toolkit wasn't brimming with shiny metal instruments. It was a testament to the power of simple, natural materials. Imagine standing there, 7 millennia ago, with the vast, green sweep of the German plains stretching around you. Your task, to carve a massive, perfect circle, hundreds of feet across, into the ground, and then meticulously place timber posts that would act as gateways, precisely aligned with the solstices and equinoxes. Your hands, strong and calloused, would be gripping tools made from things you found around you. You'd be wielding sturdy antler picks, perhaps, the shed antlers of deer, sharpened and hardened, perfect for breaking up the soil. You might use broad, flat wooden shovels, or even the shoulder blades of large animals, to scoop out the loosened earth. For cutting and shaping the timber posts, which were substantial, you'd rely on ground stone axes, flint or other hard stones, painstakingly polished to create a sharp edge. These weren't quick tools, mind you. Each swing, each scrape, each chop was a deliberate act of will. It's the kind of work that makes you appreciate modern excavators, let me tell you. You'd probably give up and invent Netflix instead of digging that ditch by hand, wouldn't you? The sheer volume of earth moved for Goseck's ditches was immense, a testament to collective effort. You wouldn't have wheelbarrows. Instead, you'd likely use woven baskets, or even animal hides stretched between poles, to carry the soil away, dumping it to form the inner and outer banks. It was a slow, rhythmic dance of human labor, day after day, week after week, under the watchful eye of the very sun they sought to measure. Now, for the really clever bit, the precision. How do you get those alignments so spot on? You don't have protractors or sextants. But what you do have, my friend, is patience, keen observation, and the greatest clock of all, the sky itself. The mainstream historical fact here is that Neolithic societies across the globe, including the linear pottery culture, relied almost entirely on simple, natural materials like wood, stone, and bone for their tools, adapting them with remarkable effectiveness. Their ingenuity wasn't about complex machinery, but about understanding and manipulating the physics of their environment. So, how did they achieve such astonishing accuracy? One primary method, you can imagine, was direct observation over extended periods. For the solstices, for example, they would have carefully marked the point on the horizon where the sun rose on the shortest day of the year, and where it set on that same day. They do this not just once, but year after year, refining their markers until they had a consistent, reliable line of sight. It was a bit like a giant, slow-motion sundial, teaching them the rhythm of the cosmos. To establish straight lines and angles over distance, they wouldn't have relied on a single line of sight from a central point. Instead, think about how you might line up two fence posts in your backyard if you didn't have a string. You'd stand behind the first post and sight towards the second, then place a third so it appeared perfectly in line with the first two. Now, imagine scaling that up. This double sighting pole method, or similar variations, would have allowed them to extend precise lines across the circular area, ensuring the gateways aligned perfectly with their observed celestial events. For maintaining level surfaces across the site, they might have used very simple, yet effective, water-based methods. A shallow pool of water, always seeking its own level, provides a perfectly flat reference plane. You could use this to check the height of different points around the circle, or to ensure that the base of your timber posts were all on the same horizontal plane. Similarly, for ensuring the verticality of their massive timber posts, they would have employed a simple plumb bob, a weighted string. Hold it up, and the string hangs perfectly vertical, giving you a true upright line to guide your post setting. It sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? But sometimes, the simplest solutions are the most profound. Here's a quirky thought. Some researchers have even theorized that for extremely fine adjustments, they might have used the reflection of stars or the sun in a still pool of water, or even a polished stone, to determine angles or levels with an almost optical precision. It's a fascinating idea, suggesting an even deeper, more subtle interaction with their environment. They didn't need an app for that. Their app was the entire sky, reflected in a puddle. And this leads us to an open scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether their understanding of geometry was purely empirical, learned through generations of observation and practice, a kind of inherited wisdom passed from elder to apprentice, or if they possessed a more abstract, theoretical grasp of spatial relationships, a kind of proto-mathematics that we can only barely glimpse today. Did they know the angles in a numerical sense, or did they simply see and feel them, replicating what worked? Regardless of the exact level of their theoretical understanding, the practical ingenuity was undeniable. They harnessed the sun's shadow, the moon's cycle, and the steady movement of the stars, turning the vast canvas of the sky into their ultimate survey instrument. They didn't need complex calculations. They needed keen eyes, steady hands, and an almost sacred connection to the rhythms of their world. The Goseck Circle stands as a silent monument to their remarkable capacity to observe, to plan, and to construct with a precision that still humbles us today, using nothing more than the earth, wood, and their own profound understanding of the cosmos. It's truly a marvel, isn't it? A testament to what quiet, focused human effort can achieve, even 7,000 years ago. You've seen Goseck as a silent clock, a patient calendar marking the sun's slow dance across the sky. But imagine, if you will, that this isn't just a giant, really fancy sundial for ancient farmers. Oh no. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of sleepy orange and deep indigo, and the stars began to prickle through the darkening canvas, Goseck likely transformed. It was more than just an observatory. It was a sacred stage, a hallowed ground where the very rhythm of the cosmos intertwined with the beating hearts of the linear pottery people. Beyond the precise astronomical measurements, beyond the practical need to know when to plant the barley or harvest the wheat, you begin to sense a deeper hum, a gentle thrum of ritual and belief that held this community together, like a very well-behaved spiritual superglue. Picture yourself standing there, the cool earth beneath your bare feet, the scent of wood smoke mingling with the damp, rich smell of the soil. The air is thick with anticipation. This isn't just about noting the shortest day of the year, it's about pleading with the sun, coaxing it back from its long slumber. It's about celebrating the promise of light, of warmth, of life returning to a world that has felt the biting chill of winter. You can almost hear the soft, rhythmic chanting, perhaps the low thrum of a drum, echoing off the timber palisades. These weren't just scientific observations, they were prayers etched into the landscape, a physical manifestation of their hopes and fears, particularly during those crucial moments of the year when the very survival of their crops, and thus their people, hung in the balance. Think about the sheer, quiet drama of the winter solstice. You're huddled with your community, the breath misting in the cold air, wrapped in animal hides that smell faintly of smoke and earth. Everyone is watching that eastern gateway, that perfect slit in the earthworks. The sun, a tiny sliver of fiery orange, begins to creep above the distant horizon, precisely framed by the timbers, as if it's making its grand entrance just for you. There's a collective gasp, a murmur of awe, perhaps a cheer. It's a moment of profound relief, a cosmic sigh of, "Phew, it worked! The sun is coming back!" You just know they didn't simply nod sagely and update their ancient Google Calendar. No, there would have been offerings, perhaps small clay effigies, carefully crafted pottery filled with grains, or even just the smoke from a special fire, rising like a silent prayer to the heavens. It's their version of a New Year's Eve countdown, but with much higher stakes and definitely no sparkly hats. And it wasn't just the winter solstice. The equinoxes, when day and night stood in perfect, delicate balance, would have held their own significance. Perhaps these were times for reflection, for community decision-making, or for rites of passage, marking the transition from childhood to adulthood. The summer solstice, the year's longest day, would have been a celebration of abundance, of the earth's fertility at its peak. Imagine feasts, storytelling, maybe even some very early forms of competitive crop growing. "My barley is taller than yours." "Oh yeah? Well, my millet is way more impressive." Each alignment, each celestial event, wasn't just a tick mark on a cosmic calendar. It was a cue for a specific ritual, a moment to reaffirm their connection to the land, the sky, and each other. This deep reliance on the seasonal cycle for survival meant that the sun and the earth became central figures in their spiritual tapestry. It's a mainstream historical fact, widely observed across many early agricultural societies, that rituals tied to fertility, harvest, and the sun's journey were paramount. They needed the sun to warm the earth, the rain to nourish the crops, and the earth to yield its bounty. Goseck, with its precise alignments, was the physical embodiment of this interconnectedness, a constant reminder of the delicate balance that sustained their lives. It wasn't just a place to observe, it was a place to participate, to actively engage with the forces they believed governed their world. It was where they sought to influence the heavens, to ensure the benevolent continuation of the cycle of life. So, what kind of offerings might have been made in this hallowed space? You wouldn't find anything too dramatic or gruesome here, given the overall, gentle hold, vibe. Think humble, meaningful gestures. Perhaps small, perfectly formed clay vessels, filled with the first fruits of the harvest, or the seeds for the next planting season. Maybe intricately decorated pottery shards, broken intentionally as a symbolic release, or carefully arranged animal bones from a communal feast, honoring the life given. Some archaeologists suggest that even certain types of highly decorated flint tools or polished stone axes, too fine for everyday use, might have been sacrificed or offered up within such sacred enclosures. It's like when you offer your last cookie to a friend, but instead of a friend, it's the sun god, and instead of a cookie, it's a really nice axe. Now, here's a quirky tidbit to ponder. While Goseck itself hasn't yielded a vast trove of specific ritualistic artifacts, it was largely filled in and forgotten for millennia. Evidence from contemporary sites in the region, like the discovery of the Nebra sky disk, tells us just how sophisticated their understanding of the cosmos was, and how deeply intertwined it was with their spiritual beliefs. The sky disk, found not too far from Goseck, depicts the sun, moon, and stars, possibly even the Pleiades, and is believed to have been used for astronomical observations and calendrical purposes, but also held profound religious significance. It suggests that these weren't just simple farmers staring blankly at the sky. They were developing complex cosmologies, complete with deities, myths, and specific ways of interacting with the celestial realm. It's like they had their own ancient version of a Star Wars universe, but with fewer lightsabers and more really old dirt. This gentle hold Goseck had on the community's spiritual life wasn't about fear or coercion. It was about order, reassurance, and connection. In a world without written language, without sprawling cities or complex bureaucracies, the Goseck Circle provided a tangible anchor. It was a place where the community could come together, share their collective anxieties and hopes, and feel a profound sense of belonging. It offered predictability in an unpredictable world, a promise that after the longest night, the sun would return. It wasn't about appeasing angry gods with terrifying sacrifices, but rather about nurturing a harmonious relationship with the natural world, ensuring its continued generosity through reverence and respect. It was less fire and brimstone, and more warm sun and fertile ground. However, and this is where historians love to have a good, spirited debate, archaeologists continue to debate the exact nature of the rituals performed within its earthen embrace. Was it primarily a harvest festival site? Did it serve as a burial ground for revered ancestors? Were specific animal sacrifices conducted, and if so, for what purpose? The answers remain elusive, often pieced together from tantalizing fragments of evidence found at other, similar sites, or through careful interpretation of the Goseck structure itself. We can only infer so much from a few post holes and ditches. It's like trying to understand an entire Broadway musical just by looking at the stage layout. You get the general idea, but you miss all the singing, dancing, and dramatic monologues. So, as we drift away from the idea of Goseck as purely a scientific instrument, you're left with a sense of its deeper, more soulful purpose. It was a place where the human spirit connected with the vastness of the cosmos, where the daily rhythms of life were celebrated and sanctified, and where the community found solace and meaning in the predictable dance of the sun and stars. It was a sanctuary, a stage, and a spiritual compass, all rolled into one magnificent, ancient earthen circle. Its gentle embrace reached out, not just to the celestial bodies, but to the very core of what it meant to be human in a world guided by the sun. You know, as you drift deeper into the soft hum of Goseck's past, a truly remarkable thought begins to unfurl itself, like a gentle, ancient map. Goseck, with its quiet, earthen embrace and its precise celestial whispers, wasn't some isolated stroke of genius. Oh no. It was merely one star in a vast, glittering constellation of ancient human ingenuity, a global family of circular monuments sharing the exact same skyward gaze. You see, the urge to look up, to chart the sun's slow dance and the moon's mysterious phases, it wasn't just a German thing. It was a human thing, a deep, abiding curiosity that spanned continents and millennia, connecting minds separated by oceans and epochs. Imagine, if you will, the sheer audacity of it all. Without satellites, without even a decent telescope, ancient peoples all over the world somehow looked at the same sky and came to similar conclusions about its importance. It's almost as if they were all part of some ancient, very slow-paced international stargazing club, just without the Zoom calls. They were all collectively, quietly, trying to figure out how the universe worked, how to tell when to plant, when to harvest, and when to throw the biggest, most important seasonal party. When you think of ancient circular monuments aligned with the heavens, your mind almost certainly drifts first to the granddaddy of them all, the most famous, most photographed, most Instagrammed, if Instagram had existed 4,500 years ago, of Goseck's distant cousins, Stonehenge. You picture those colossal sarsen stones, standing sentinel on the Salisbury Plain in England, their sheer bulk a testament to unimaginable effort. While Goseck whispers its secrets from a cozy earthen ditch, Stonehenge bellows them from towering megaliths. Yet, their most famous secret is eerily similar. Both are meticulously aligned to the winter solstice sunrise. You can almost hear the ancient builders, thousands of years apart, nodding in agreement, saying, Yep, that's where the sun pops up on the shortest day. Let's put a big marker there. The scale is different, of course. Imagine trying to get those stones delivered without a crane, or even a decent set of wheels. The sheer logistics make Goseck's timber posts look like a quick IKEA assembly job in comparison. But the underlying astronomical principle, the profound desire to mark time with the heavens, is undeniably the same. You stand at Goseck, and you can almost feel the echo of those distant English plains, a shared human impulse reaching across the mists of time. Now, let's gently drift a little further west, across the Irish Sea, to a place that predates even Stonehenge, a truly ancient wonder called Newgrange. This isn't strictly a circle, in the Goseck sense, but a massive passage tomb, a colossal mound of earth and stone built by Neolithic people around 3200 BCE. So, in terms of sheer age, it's actually closer to Goseck's venerable antiquity than Stonehenge is. But what makes Newgrange a kindred spirit to Goseck is its breathtaking astronomical precision. High above the entrance, there's a small opening, a roof box, that was designed with such meticulous care that, for just a few minutes around the winter solstice, the rising sun's rays penetrate the long passage, illuminating the inner chamber. You can almost feel the anticipation, the hushed reverence of those ancient people gathered in the cold, dark passage, waiting for the first sliver of light to pierce the gloom, a powerful symbol of rebirth and the returning sun. It's a different architectural form, yes, a tomb rather than an open circle, but the dedication to capturing that specific, life-giving celestial moment is a shared language of the ancients. You can practically hear them saying, "We're not just building a calendar, we're building a cosmic experience." But Goseck's family tree stretches far beyond the misty isles of Europe. Let's take a truly enormous leap, not just across an ocean, but across time itself, to a place in the Sahara Desert, in modern-day Egypt. Here, you find Nabta Playa, a site that makes Goseck look like a relative newcomer. As far back as 7,500 to 6,000 BC, long before the pharaohs built their pyramids, nomadic peoples here were arranging megaliths in circles and alignments. Some of these alignments point to the summer solstice, others to the rising of specific stars like Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky. It's a stark, desert landscape, the stones weathered by millennia of sun and sand, but they speak of the same profound connection to the cosmos. You might even find some quirky remnants here, like the burial site of a cow, carefully placed and adorned, suggesting a deeper, perhaps spiritual, connection between the celestial observations and their daily lives, including their vital cattle. It's a humbling thought. Humanity was looking up and building observatories even before they settled down to farm in a big way. Now pivot your gaze across another vast ocean, to the American Southwest, to the arid landscape of Chaco Canyon in New Mexico. Here, the Pueblo people, around 850 to 1250 CE, built incredible multi-story structures, often aligned with astronomical events. One of the most famous examples is the Sun Dagger at Fajada Butte. You see three large slabs of rock that funnel sunlight onto spiral petroglyphs carved into the cliff face. At the summer solstice, a single dagger of light pierces the center of a large spiral. At the winter solstice, two daggers frame it. And at the equinoxes, a smaller dagger bisects a smaller spiral. It's not a circle of earth or standing stones, but a clever manipulation of natural rock formations and carved symbols, yet the purpose is identical: to precisely mark the turning points of the sun. It's a testament to ancient ingenuity, proving that you don't always need to quarry massive stones. Sometimes, you just need really, really good shadows and an observant eye. No GPS needed, just meticulous patience. And what about a lesser known, but equally fascinating, cousin from the Balkans? You could travel to Kokino, in North Macedonia, a Bronze Age archaeological site, around 1800 BC, that's been dubbed a megalithic observatory. Here, ancient people didn't build massive structures so much as they used the natural landscape. They identified specific notches and markers in the volcanic rock formations on a mountain peak that aligned with the rising sun and moon at solstices and equinoxes. Imagine looking out over a vast, ancient landscape, and realizing that nature itself had provided the perfect framework for your cosmic calendar. It's less about construction and more about keen observation and clever adaptation, a subtle nod to the fact that sometimes the universe provides the blueprints, and you just need to read them correctly. So, what does this grand tour of Goseck Circle tell you? It's a profound mainstream historical fact that archaeoastronomy, the study of how ancient peoples understood and marked celestial events, is a truly global phenomenon. From the towering megaliths of Western Europe to the desert stones of Africa, from the intricate rock art of the Americas to the natural observatories of the Balkans, humanity shared a common, deep-seated drive. They weren't just building fancy calendars, they were integrating the rhythms of the cosmos into the very fabric of their lives, their spiritual beliefs, their agricultural practices, and their community gatherings. Historians still argue whether the primary motivation for these structures was purely astronomical, ritualistic, or a complex blend of both, serving as community calendars, spiritual centers, and gathering places all at once. Was Goseck a church, a town hall, or a giant sundial? Or all three? The debate continues, adding another layer of quiet mystery to these ancient sites. But what is undeniable is the sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics that these diverse cultures possessed, often without written language, relying instead on generations of careful observation and oral tradition. You can almost feel the quiet pride of these ancient engineers, knowing their carefully placed stones or timbers would mark the seasons for generations to come. Goseck, then, isn't just a fascinating German anomaly. It's a crucial piece in a global puzzle, a whisper from the deep past that resonates with countless other whispers from across the world. It reminds us that no matter where our ancestors lived, no matter what language they spoke, they all looked up at the same vast, wondrous sky. And in that shared gaze, they found meaning, order, and a way to connect with the timeless dance of the cosmos. You've seen the subtle embrace of Goseck's earthworks, imagined the soft kiss of the midwinter sun, and even pondered the quiet daily rhythms of the people who lived beneath its shadow. But now, let's drift into one of the most intriguing questions of all: how, exactly, did these ancient hands achieve such remarkable, almost impossible, astronomical precision? Imagine, for a moment, trying to build something this accurate without a single laser level, a GPS coordinate, or even a decent protractor. Your average modern contractor, used to apps and digital readouts, would simply weep softly into their hard hat. Yet they did it. Quietly. Thoughtfully. Picture yourself standing with them, 7 millennia ago, as the world stretches out, vast and untamed. There are no streetlights to dim the stars, no digital clocks to tell you the time. Your very survival, your understanding of the seasons, your ability to plant and harvest, depends on the silent, rhythmic ballet of the heavens. So you watch. And you watch. And you keep watching. One of the most widely accepted theories, a mainstream historical fact that underpins much of what we understand about ancient astronomy, is the power of patient, long-term observation. These weren't people who just glanced at the sky once and said, "Yup, that looks about right." Oh no, this was dedication. You see the sun rise each morning, a fiery orb climbing above the eastern horizon. You notice where it appears. Does it pop up over that distant hillock today? Or a little further to the left, near that peculiar clump of trees? You mark it. Perhaps with a simple stone, a stake in the ground, or even just a memory etched deeply into the landscape of your mind. Then you repeat. Day after day. Week after week. Season after season. You watch the sun's journey across the sky, its arc rising higher in summer, sinking lower in winter. You see the subtle, almost imperceptible shift of its sunrise and sunset points along the horizon. It's like watching paint dry, but with the entire cosmos as your canvas. Over years, decades, perhaps even generations, these tiny shifts become clear patterns. The point where the sun reaches its absolute lowest, shortest arc in winter? That's your winter solstice. The highest, longest arc in summer? That's the summer solstice. And the 2 points in between, when day and night are perfectly balanced? The equinoxes. Think of it as the ultimate slow-motion camera. They weren't just observing, they were calibrating their world. They used the simplest of tools, yet wielded them with profound intent. Imagine a tall, straight pole, perhaps a sturdy young tree trunk, planted firmly in the ground. As the sun moves, this pole casts a shadow. By carefully marking the tip of that shadow at precise times of day, or by observing its length at noon, they could track the sun's height. This, gnomon, was their most basic, yet incredibly effective, instrument. It's like having a sundial that tells you more than just the hour. It tells you the season, the year, the very pulse of the Earth's orbit. And what about those precise alignments? How did they ensure the gateways of Goseck pointed exactly to the solstice sunrise or sunset? Here, the theories gently diverge, but all point to ingenuity. One method could have involved foresight and backsighting. Imagine standing at the center of the proposed circle. You'd mark the precise spot on the distant horizon where the winter solstice sun was expected to rise, based on years of prior observation. Then, you'd align a pole or a series of markers from your central point towards that horizon marker. This line would then dictate the placement of your gateway. It's a bit like lining up a shot in billiards, but with celestial bodies instead of cue balls. Another fascinating, if slightly more fringe, theory suggests the use of shadow walking, or shadow tracking. Imagine a particularly clear morning around the solstice. A skilled observer, or perhaps a group of them, would plant a pole at a designated central point. As the sun rises, casting a long shadow, they wouldn't just mark the tip of the shadow. Instead, they might meticulously walk along the very edge of the shadow, marking points as they go, creating a precise line. This line, especially when compared with observations over several days around the solstice, could help pinpoint the exact trajectory of the sun's first rays. It's a method that relies on acute spatial awareness and the ability to work collaboratively, a bit like a very slow, very ancient form of human GPS. You can almost hear their quiet footsteps, their hushed discussions, as they trace the sun's ethereal path on the ground. Then there's the concept of iterative refinement. It wasn't a one-and-done build, like assembling a flat-pack wardrobe, which, let's be honest, often requires iterative refinement of its own. They might have built an initial structure, observed its accuracy over a full year or more, and then subtly adjusted, perhaps shifting a timber post or adding another earthwork mound to fine-tune the alignment. It was a living monument, evolving with their understanding, much like a good sourdough starter that gets better with each feeding. For leveling the ground, essential for accurate observations, they likely used water levels. A simple, shallow ditch filled with water provides a perfectly flat surface, allowing them to ensure the ground inside their circular enclosure was level. Or perhaps they used a simple plumb bob, a weight on a string, to ensure verticality for their posts. These are surprisingly effective, low-tech solutions that demonstrate a profound understanding of basic physics. Now, here's where the scholarly debates quietly emerge. Historians still argue whether their understanding of celestial mechanics was purely empirical, based on painstaking observation, or if they possessed a more abstract, proto-mathematical framework for their calculations. Did they simply see the patterns, or did they have a nascent understanding of the underlying geometry of the cosmos? Was it a collection of observed facts, passed down orally and through practical demonstration, or was there a hidden system of ancient geometry at play, waiting to be rediscovered? The truth, most likely, lies somewhere in the gentle middle, a beautiful blend of practical observation refined by generations of thoughtful deduction. Consider the human element, too. Who were these ancient engineers? Were they specialized skywatchers, revered for their knowledge? Or was this a communal effort, with every member of the linear pottery culture contributing to the vast collective knowledge? Perhaps certain individuals, blessed with an almost uncanny sense of direction or an incredible memory for visual detail, acted as the primary calibrators, guiding the community in their construction. It speaks to a profound respect for the natural world and a deep, intuitive intelligence that we, with all our modern gadgets, often forget how to access. We rely on our phones to tell us the time and date. They relied on the very fabric of the universe, and built monuments to honor that connection. It's a quiet testament to their patience, their collaboration, and their profound connection to the natural world. They didn't need complex equations or advanced technology. They simply needed time, keen eyes, and the collective wisdom of their community. And in the quiet hum of Goseck, you can almost hear the echoes of their thoughtful whispers, as they slowly, meticulously, align their world with the cosmos. You've seen Goseck rise, a quiet monument to the sun and stars, a testament to ancient ingenuity. But now, as the soft light of our story begins to dim, we must consider a question that often hangs heavy in the air around such ancient places, like the evening mist clinging to the fields. What happened? Why did the diligent hands that built and maintained Goseck eventually just stop? Imagine, if you will, the slow, almost imperceptible unwinding of a grand clock, its gears grinding to a halt not with a sudden clang, but with a gradual, sleepy sigh. Goseck didn't vanish in a fiery cataclysm or a dramatic exodus. No, Goseck simply drifted into a long, quiet farewell, as if the entire community collectively decided to hit the snooze button on their cosmic alarm clock and just keep on sleeping. Think of it like that favorite old playground slide you loved as a child. One day you just stopped going. Maybe you found a new, shinier park. Maybe you grew too tall. Or maybe, just maybe, the slide itself started to get a bit rusty, and the splinters became more frequent than the joy. Goseck's abandonment was much the same, a slow relinquishing, a gentle letting go. The precise reasons remain a tantalizing mystery, a riddle whispered on the winds that still sweep across its ancient earthworks. One of the most compelling, and perhaps saddest, theories is that the very people who built Goseck, the linear pottery culture, simply moved on. Mainstream historical fact tells us that this culture, while remarkably widespread and stable for centuries, wasn't static. Their settlements often shifted over time, perhaps in search of new, fertile lands as older ones became depleted, or maybe to follow migrating game, or even just because the ancient equivalent of a new housing development opened up downriver with better views. Imagine the village elder saying, "All right, folks, new year, new dirt. Let's pack up the pottery and see if the grass is greener over yonder hill. Don't forget your sun-tracking sticks, just in case." It's easy to picture the initial intent to rebuild or re-establish their celestial observatory elsewhere, but then life, with its daily demands of foraging and farming, just got in the way. Building one monumental earthwork circle is impressive. Building two might just be asking for trouble, especially if you're already tired from moving all your ancient furniture. Perhaps the knowledge itself began to fade, like an old photograph left too long in the sun. The complex understanding of celestial mechanics, the intricate timing, the precise alignment, these weren't things you just picked up from a quick YouTube tutorial. They were passed down through generations, taught by elders, practiced with diligence. What if a key astronomer or two, the Goseck equivalent of your favorite eccentric professor, simply passed away without fully imparting their wisdom? Or what if a succession of particularly cloudy seasons made accurate observations difficult, leading to a loss of faith in the system? You can almost hear the grumbling. Another cloudy solstice? Honestly, Harold, what's the point of all this digging if we can't even see the sun? I'm going back to bed. It's a quirky thought, isn't it? That ancient cloud cover might have been the ultimate undoing of a grand astronomical project? Another possibility centers on changing beliefs. You see, human spirituality is rarely static. New gods emerge, old rituals lose their potency, and fresh ways of understanding the cosmos take hold. Perhaps a new spiritual leader arose, advocating for different practices, ones that didn't require such a massive, permanent earthwork. Maybe they found more solace in individual introspection, or in a different kind of communal gathering, or perhaps they simply decided that tracking the sun was a bit too much like work and not enough like worship. It's not hard to imagine the ancient equivalent of a spiritual fad sweeping through the land. Forget the big circle, Brenda. Everyone's doing the standing silently by a really tall tree and just feeling the sun thing now. It's much more convenient for potlucks. Environmental changes could also have played a subtle, yet significant, role. While not as dramatic as an ice age, even small shifts in local climate, a prolonged drought, a series of unusually wet years, or a slight alteration in river courses, could have impacted agricultural yields or made the immediate area less desirable for habitation. If the surrounding land could no longer support the community, or if resources like timber, crucial for maintaining the wooden palisades of the circle, became scarce, then the maintenance of Goseck would have become an unsustainable burden. Imagine trying to keep your ancient astronomical calendar in perfect working order when you're constantly worried about whether your crops will survive the summer. Priorities, as they say, shift. And then there's the human element of weariness. Building Goseck was a massive undertaking, a feat of communal labor. Maintaining it, repairing the wooden palisades, clearing vegetation from the earthworks, keeping the alignments clear, that also required continuous effort. Perhaps, after centuries, the enthusiasm simply waned. Maybe the younger generations, those who hadn't personally experienced the initial excitement of its construction, saw it as more of a chore than a sacred duty. Oh, do we have to go clear the weeds from the solstice gate again? Can't we just guess where the sun is going to rise this year? It's a relatable sentiment, isn't it? The sheer effort of keeping anything grand and old in pristine condition often falls by the wayside when new, shiny distractions emerge. Historians still argue whether the abandonment was due to internal societal pressures, like a decline in social cohesion or the rise of new power structures that didn't value the old ways, or external pressures, such as conflict with neighboring groups. While there's no clear evidence of a violent end for Goseck itself, the wider linear pottery culture did eventually give way to new cultural groups. Perhaps Goseck simply became obsolete, a relic of a bygone era in the eyes of new inhabitants, or even the descendants of its original builders. It might have been quietly repurposed, or simply left to the gentle embrace of nature, its purpose forgotten, its alignments obscured by the tireless march of grass and trees. So, you can picture the scene, the last flicker of a fire in the central space, the final footsteps echoing away from the gates. Then silence. The wind, once carrying the murmurs of ceremony, now only rustles through the growing reeds. The earthworks, once meticulously maintained, slowly begin to soften at the edges, their sharp angles rounded by rain and time. The wooden palisades, once proud and strong, rot and crumble, their timber returning to the soil from which they came. Grasses creep over the pathways, flowers bloom where ancient feet once trod, and small animals make their homes in the silent embrace of the earth mounds. Goseck didn't die, it simply fell into a deep, deep sleep, a slumber lasting thousands of years, waiting patiently for new eyes to rediscover its quiet wisdom. It became a whisper on the wind, a barely perceptible hump in the landscape, its grand purpose dissolved into the very earth it was built from. You remember how Goseck simply drifted into a long, quiet sleep, a silent sentinel of seasons past, its purpose fading into the mists of time. For millennia, it lay hidden, swallowed by the patient earth, its ancient whispers muffled by layers of soil, roots, and forgetfulness. Imagine it, a vast, circular secret, known only to the slow-crawling worms and the deep-diving moles, perhaps the occasional badger who might have inadvertently sniffed out a particularly ancient post-hole. It wasn't a dramatic, explosive rediscovery, no Indiana Jones moment with daring escapes from rolling boulders. Oh no, Goseck's awakening was as gentle and unassuming as its original design. It was a slow, almost sleepy stretch, a quiet stirring from its very long dirt nap. And it all began not with a shovel, but with a bird's-eye view, proving once again that sometimes, the best way to find something truly ancient is to get really, really high up. So lean back, settle in, and picture the flat, agricultural landscape of Saxony-Anhalt in eastern Germany in the early 1990s. The year is 1991, to be precise. There's been some pretty heavy flooding in the region, which, isn't exactly ideal for farmers, but it turns out, sometimes a little hydrological chaos can be a boon for archaeology. As the waters receded, leaving behind a new pattern on the land, a routine aerial survey was commissioned. This wasn't some high-tech spy satellite mission, just a light aircraft, probably buzzing along with a camera pointed down, capturing images of the land for agricultural or cartographical purposes. You can almost hear the gentle hum of the small plane, the soft click of the camera shutter as it passes over fields that had seen countless harvests, each one oblivious to the monumental secret beneath their very roots. It's like the universe decided it was finally time for Goseck to stop playing hide-and-seek. And then there it was. not a giant, flashing neon sign saying, "Ancient Sun Observatory here," but subtle, almost imperceptible differences in the color and growth patterns of the crops. These are what archaeologists affectionately call crop marks. You see, where ancient ditches or buried structures exist, they affect how water drains and how plants grow. A buried ditch might hold more moisture, making the crops above it a lusher, darker green. A buried wall or compacted ground, on the other hand, might lead to drier conditions, resulting in stunted, paler growth. From the ground, you'd likely see nothing but an ordinary field. But from the sky, these faint variations weave together to reveal ghostly outlines of long-lost features. It's like the Earth itself was trying to draw a connect-the-dots picture for us, and this humble aerial photograph was the key. What the photographs revealed was a series of concentric circles, incredibly faint, yet undeniably geometric and large. It was Harold Meller, a sharp-eyed archaeologist from the State Office for Heritage Management and Archaeology Saxony-Anhalt, who first recognized the significance of these fleeting patterns in the dirt. He wasn't looking for a 7,000-year-old observatory, mind you. He was just doing his job, sifting through aerial photos, probably sipping a lukewarm coffee. But then, bam, or rather, whoosh, like a gentle breeze of realization. The circular patterns, the distinct gaps, they just screamed, "Ancient monument!" It was like spotting a perfectly round crop circle, but knowing it wasn't the work of pranksters or extraterrestrials, but rather, extremely dedicated ancient humans. The initial excitement, however, was tempered with archaeological caution. You don't just grab a shovel and start digging willy-nilly when you've got a potential 7,000-year-old treasure on your hands. First came ground-based surveys, using magnetometers and other non-invasive tools that can detect disturbances in the Earth's magnetic field, essentially mapping out buried features without disturbing them. Think of it as giving the ground an MRI. These surveys confirmed what the crop marks hinted at, a massive, circular earthwork, far too regular to be natural, and with distinct openings that seemed to be pointing in very specific directions. The whispers from Goseck were getting louder, clearer. Finally, in 2002, the moment arrived for the more direct approach. The archaeological excavation began. This wasn't some rushed treasure hunt. This was painstaking, methodical work, carried out by dedicated teams of archaeologists who treat every speck of soil like a potential clue. They carefully scraped away layers of earth, centimeter by agonizing centimeter, like peeling an onion, but with way more dirt. Each shovelful, each brushstroke, revealed more of Goseck's story. They uncovered the precise outlines of the ditches, the exact locations of the post holes, those ghostly remnants where mighty timber posts once stood. It was like finding the empty sockets where the ancient eyes of Goseck used to gaze. And what they found was nothing short of astonishing. The post holes confirmed the perfectly circular shape and, crucially, the precise alignment of the gates. The two main southern gates pointed directly to the rising and setting sun on the winter solstice. The other gates marked the summer solstice and the equinoxes. It was all there, laid bare by the patient hands of modern archaeology. The sheer astronomical precision, achieved thousands of years ago with seemingly rudimentary tools, was breathtaking. It confirmed that Goseck wasn't just a big circle, it was a sophisticated, purpose-built instrument for tracking the cosmos. It was ancient Google Calendar, but made of wood and dirt. Once the initial excavation was complete, a fascinating debate emerged among the archaeological community. What should be done with Goseck? Should it be left as an excavated site, a series of trenches and markers for academics to study? Or should it be brought back to life? Historians still argue whether the reconstruction of ancient sites is always the best approach, weighing the benefits of public education and experience against the potential for misinterpretation or loss of original context. In Goseck's case, the decision was made to reconstruct. The aim was not to create a perfect replica, but an accurate, full-scale model that would allow visitors to experience the circle as its original builders might have. It was a bold move, a chance to let people truly walk in the footsteps of the linear pottery culture. The reconstruction itself was a monumental undertaking, completed in 2005. Imagine the dedication: massive oak timbers, carefully selected, cut, and erected into the precise post holes revealed by the excavation. It wasn't just about sticking poles in the ground. It was about recreating the scale, the feel, the very presence of this ancient monument. The inner ring of posts, the outer palisade, the carefully aligned gateways, all meticulously put back in place. You can now walk through those reconstructed gates, feel the smooth, sturdy wood beneath your fingertips, and truly appreciate the thoughtful construction. It's an incredible experience, allowing you to connect with the past in a tangible way that mere drawings or photographs can't achieve. Today, Goseck is no longer a hidden secret. It's a vibrant, living monument, a place where the ancient whispers are once again heard, often quite loudly. It has become a magnet for visitors, from curious tourists to dedicated sky watchers. Mainstream historical fact: the reconstructed Goseck Circle is now a popular tourist attraction and a significant site for archaeological education, drawing thousands of visitors annually. It hosts public events, especially around the solstices and equinoxes, when people gather to witness the sun's gentle kiss on the gates, just as their ancestors did millennia ago. It's a truly beautiful sight, watching the sunrise perfectly framed by those ancient line timbers, connecting you directly to the profound wisdom of the past. And speaking of those solstice gatherings, here's a quirky tidbit. While many come for the historical and astronomical significance, Goseck has also become a focal point for various modern New Age and spiritual groups. You might find people meditating, performing ancient rituals, or what they believe are ancient rituals, or simply soaking in the energy of the site. It's a fascinating blend of scientific understanding and spiritual seeking, all converging on this 7,000-year-old dirt circle. It's almost as if the circle, after its long slumber, is now attracting everyone who feels a pull towards the ancient rhythms of the earth and sky, even if their interpretations are, shall we say, a little unconventional. The reawakening of Goseck in modern times has been a triumph of archaeological detective work and a testament to humanity's enduring fascination with the cosmos. It shows us that even the most deeply buried secrets can resurface, given enough time, the right technology, thanks, drones, and the patient dedication of those who listen for the Earth's softest whispers. Goseck now stands tall again, not just as a historical curiosity, but as a place where modern minds can reach back across the millennia and touch the very ingenuity and spiritual depth of our ancient forebears. It's a reminder that sometimes, the best way to see the past is to look up, and then, perhaps, to gently put a few things back together. The sleepy hum of our journey through time continues, doesn't it? You might think, after all we've uncovered about Goseck, that its story is neatly tied up with a bow, ready to be shelved in the grand library of history. But oh, my dear friend, when you delve into the truly ancient, you quickly learn that every answer usually spawns about 10 new, delightfully enigmatic questions. Goseck, with its quiet whispers from 7 millennia ago, is no exception. It's less a resolved case file and more a perpetually unfolding mystery, like a particularly stubborn duvet cover that just won't lie flat. So, as we settle into the soft glow of what Goseck might have been, let's also ponder the shadowy corners, the tantalizing blanks on the ancient map that archaeologists, historians, and even the most dedicated amateur skygazers are still trying to fill. You see, while we know Goseck was a celestial calendar, a sun tracker, a place of profound significance, the why and the how often remain frustratingly elusive, like trying to catch a particularly shy firefly in the twilight. One of the biggest, most persistent questions that hangs in the air around Goseck, like the lingering scent of ancient wood smoke, is its precise ritualistic purpose. We touched upon the idea that it was more than just an astronomical instrument, a cosmic GPS for ancient farmers. But what happened within those timber circles? Was it a place of communal feasting, where the bounty of the harvest was shared under the watchful eye of the solstitial sun? Did people gather for rites of passage, perhaps marking the transition from childhood to adulthood as the sun crossed a specific threshold? Imagine the hushed reverence, the quiet anticipation as the first rays of the winter solstice sun pierced the southeast gate, painting a golden pathway across the inner circle. Were there offerings made to unseen deities of the sun or earth? Were there dances, songs, silent meditations? Modern archaeologists can tell you where the posts stood, and when the sun shone, but they can't yet play you the soundtrack of those ancient moments, nor describe the emotions etched on the faces of the linear pottery people. It's like finding a wonderfully intricate, antique music box, knowing it played melodies, but having no idea what those melodies sounded like. You can almost feel the echoes of ceremony, but the details remain frustratingly out of reach, like trying to remember a dream just as you wake up. Then there's the mystery of the people themselves. The linear pottery culture, the diligent hands and minds who brought Goseck into being, vanished from the archaeological record around 4500 BC, roughly when Goseck seems to have fallen into disuse. Historians still argue whether their disappearance was due to environmental changes, like a shift in climate that made their farming practices unsustainable, or if they were absorbed by incoming groups, or perhaps even faced internal strife. Did Goseck simply cease to be relevant as new beliefs or new ways of life emerged? Or did the people themselves slowly migrate away, taking their celestial wisdom with them, perhaps leaving Goseck behind as a silent monument to a bygone era? It's a bit like your favorite local coffee shop suddenly closing down. You know it was there, you know it was important, but the exact reasons for its disappearance remain a topic of fervent, slightly mournful, speculation among its former patrons. Was it the rent? A new chain moving in? Did the barista finally achieve their dream of opening a llama farm? We just don't know for Goseck's architects. And speaking of architects, how exactly did they achieve such remarkable precision? We've marveled at their ingenuity, their simple yet effective tools. But consider the scale. To align those massive gateways with the rising and setting points of the sun on the solstices, over distances of hundreds of feet, without surveying equipment, without even a proper protractor, it's mind-boggling, isn't it? Was it generations of accumulated observational knowledge, passed down meticulously from elder to apprentice? Did they use simple sticks and shadows, carefully marking the longest and shortest days, patiently refining their measurements year after year? Some theories suggest they might have used water levels, or even the careful observation of distant landmarks on the horizon, but the exact step-by-step process remains a source of quiet awe and ongoing study. It's the ancient equivalent of building a supercomputer using only rocks and string, and somehow making it work perfectly. You can imagine a particularly frustrated ancient Goseck foreman muttering, "Right, just a little to the left, no, too much, wait, is that a cloud? We'll have to wait another year for the perfect alignment, won't we?" The very materials Goseck was built from also hold secrets. The timber posts, long since rotted away, leaving only their ghostly imprints in the soil, were crucial to its function. But what kind of wood was used? Was it specifically chosen for its durability, or perhaps for some symbolic meaning? Were the posts carved with symbols or painted with pigments derived from the earth? Imagine the vibrant colors, the intricate patterns that might have adorned these ancient markers, now lost to time, leaving only the bare bones of their astronomical purpose. It's like finding a faded photograph of a magnificent tapestry. You see the outline, you grasp its structure, but the rich, living colors are gone, leaving you to imagine the full splendor. As for future discoveries, the quest for Goseck's deeper truths is far from over. Modern archaeology is constantly evolving, giving us new eyes to see the ancient world. Techniques like ground-penetrating radar, GPR, and LiDAR, light detection and ranging, are revolutionizing how we find and map ancient sites. Imagine a drone flying quietly over the landscape, sending down laser pulses that can literally see through vegetation and even shallow soil, revealing the subtle undulations and buried structures that human eyes might miss. It's like giving archaeologists X-ray vision, allowing them to spot ghost outlines of ancient settlements or forgotten pathways that lead to Goseck. Who knows what other circular enclosures, what other satellite sites, might be hiding just beneath the surface, waiting for their own gentle reawakening. Perhaps there's a smaller, less famous Goseck Jr. nearby, or a whole network of these sky-watching points, forming an ancient, interconnected super-observatory. Beyond the big structures, microarchaeology is providing astonishing insights. Scientists can now analyze tiny residues on ancient tools and pottery fragments, revealing what people ate, what plants they used, and even what activities they performed. Imagine finding a microscopic trace of pollen on a pottery shard near Goseck, allowing scientists to reconstruct the ancient landscape, the crops they grew, and even the flowers that bloomed around the circle. Or perhaps finding faint chemical traces in the soil that suggest where ancient fires were lit, or where certain materials were processed. It's like forensic science for the truly ancient, allowing us to piece together the daily lives and rituals with a level of detail previously unimaginable. You could almost find out if they preferred their ancient porridge with honey or berries, which, let's be honest, is a pretty important historical detail for some of us. Another exciting avenue is experimental archaeology. This is where modern researchers try to recreate ancient tools, techniques, and even entire structures to understand the challenges and solutions faced by ancient builders. Imagine a team of dedicated archaeologists, perhaps wearing slightly less comfortable clothes than you are right now, attempting to erect a massive timber post using only the simple levers and ropes available 7,000 years ago. Their blisters, their triumphs, and their inevitable moments of, "Oh, that's how they did it!" provide invaluable insights into the practicalities of building Goseck. It's a wonderful blend of academic rigor and good old-fashioned manual labor, proving that sometimes, the best way to understand history is to get your hands dirty, literally. Just try not to break any modern bones while trying to lift a prehistoric log, okay? Safety first, even when time traveling. And then there's the ongoing analysis of human remains, when they are found. While Goseck itself hasn't yielded many burials within the circle, nearby linear pottery culture sites have. DNA analysis, which is a relatively new and rapidly advancing field in archaeology, can tell us about the genetic makeup of these ancient people, their migrations, their health, and even their family relationships. Imagine tracing the genetic lineage of a group that built Goseck, understanding if they were indigenous to the region or if they migrated from elsewhere, carrying their astronomical knowledge with them. It adds a deeply personal layer to the grand narrative of ancient civilizations, reminding us that these were real people with real lives, real families, and real dreams under that same ancient sky. The quiet quest for Goseck's profound ancient wisdom is a continuous journey, much like the slow, deliberate turning of the celestial clock it once embodied. Each new discovery, no matter how small, adds another brushstroke to the painting of our understanding. We may never know every single detail, every whispered prayer, or every specific reason for its eventual abandonment. But the beauty of archaeology, and indeed of history itself, lies not just in the answers we find, but in the compelling nature of the questions that linger. Goseck remains a profound testament to humanity's enduring fascination with the cosmos, a silent, earthen monument that continues to invite us to gaze upward, to wonder, and to acknowledge the deep wisdom of those who came before us. Its ancient secrets are still unfolding, layer by gentle layer, inviting us to be patient, to listen closely, and to keep our minds open to the quiet whispers of the past. And so, as the final starlight twinkles softly in our story, you realize that Goseck isn't just a dusty old relic, a mere ancient calendar that's been taking a nap for 7 millennia. Oh no, it's far more than that. It's a whisper, isn't it? A soft, enduring whisper from humanity's deep, deep past, still drifting through the ages, still, in its own quiet way, guiding us. You can almost feel the faint echo of those ancient footsteps on the earth, the gentle hum of minds reaching out to the vast, silent cosmos above. You see, Goseck's timeless legacy isn't about grand pronouncements or thundering echoes. It's about the subtle, persistent truth that humans, no matter how far back you go, were always curious. Always looking up. Always trying to make sense of the world, to find rhythm in the chaos, to mark time before the invention of, well, any clock, let alone the one on your phone that probably tells you it's way past your bedtime right now. Imagine, for a moment, if your entire concept of a year, of planting, of harvesting, depended on watching a shadow creep across a wooden post at dawn. Suddenly, that little calendar app on your phone feels a tad less impressive, doesn't it? It's almost like Goseck was the original, smart home, for time-telling, just a bit slower on the updates. This ancient circle, cradled in the German landscape, serves as a profound reminder of our shared human heritage. It tells a story not just of engineering prowess, though, let's be honest, building something that precisely aligns with the solstices using nothing but sticks, stones, and a whole lot of patience is pretty mind-blowing, but of a universal human impulse. The impulse to connect with something larger than oneself. To understand the grand cosmic dance that dictates seasons, life, and death. It's a testament to the quiet, persistent genius of people who lived so long ago that their entire culture is named after the patterns on their pottery. The Linear Pottery Culture, remember them? They weren't just making pretty pots. They were building astronomical observatories with the kind of dedication that makes your weekend DIY project look like, well, a very short weekend DIY project. Goseck's whisper reminds us of the profound respect ancient peoples held for the natural world. They didn't just live in nature, they lived with it, by it, and through it. The sun wasn't just a bright orb in the sky, it was a life-giver, a timekeeper, a deity. And the earth wasn't just dirt, it was a canvas for their deepest understandings and most sacred expressions. You can almost feel the cool, damp earth beneath your imaginary bare feet as you stand within the circle, sensing the meticulous care with which each post was placed, each ditch dug. This wasn't a quick build, this was a generational project, a slow, deliberate act of faith in the cycles of the cosmos. One of the most mainstream historical facts that Goseck beautifully illustrates is the widespread and independent development of astronomical observation across diverse ancient cultures. From Stonehenge in England to the Caral Soup civilization in Peru, from the Mayan observatories in Central America to the medicine wheels of North America, humanity, it seems, universally felt compelled to map the heavens. It wasn't just one brilliant inventor who figured out sky watching. It was an innate human drive, a collective curiosity that spanned continents and millennia. Goseck is merely one of the earliest known examples of this profound, global human endeavor. It's almost as if every ancient civilization collectively decided, you know what? Let's all stare at the sky and build big circular things. Just for fun. And what about those lingering mysteries? The ones that still make archaeologists scratch their heads, probably muttering about carbon dating and post holes. Historians still argue whether the primary function of Goseck was purely calendrical, or if its celestial alignments were interwoven with complex spiritual rites and social hierarchies, perhaps even used to legitimize the power of certain leaders by their perceived connection to the cosmos. Was it just a really elaborate calendar, like an oversized, earthy sundial? Or was it a sacred space where the very act of observing the sun's journey was a form of worship, a communal binding ritual? You can imagine the high priest, or perhaps the village elder, standing at the central point, solemnly announcing, "And on this day, the sun has officially decided it's time for more daylight. You're welcome, everyone." There's also a quirky, slightly fringed tidbit that often surfaces when discussing these ancient sites. Some speculate that the precise angles and alignments weren't just about the sun's position, but about harnessing or aligning with subtle earth energies, sometimes called ley lines. While largely unproven by conventional science, the idea that these ancient builders might have intuitively sensed, or even intentionally tapped into unseen forces adds another layer of mystique to Goseck. Perhaps the very act of constructing such a precise earthwork, with its deep ditches and timber palisades, acted like an enormous, slow-motion tuning fork, resonating with the very pulse of the planet. Or maybe it just created a really good windbreak. You never know with ancient structures. Goseck's enduring whisper also guides us towards a deeper appreciation for ingenuity without the aid of modern technology. Think about it. No lasers, no GPS, no spirit levels, no power tools. Just careful observation, perhaps a plumb bob, ropes, and an astonishing amount of human effort and collaboration. Imagine trying to explain GPS to someone from the linear pottery culture. So, there are these tiny metal objects flying around the Earth, and they talk to your little handheld glowing rectangle, and it tells you exactly where you are, down to a few feet, anywhere on the planet. They probably just point at the sun and say, "We have that, but better. And it doesn't need batteries." As you drift towards the end of our journey, you can almost hear Goseck's faint, continuous hum. It's a hum of continuity, of resilience, of humanity's unwavering desire to look beyond the immediate, to grasp the immense sweep of time and the endless expanse of space. It reminds us that even after being buried and forgotten for thousands of years, these ancient places can reawaken, speaking to us across the vast chasm of time, connecting us to those who gazed at the same stars and felt the same sun on their faces. It's a gentle nudge, a soft reminder that our modern lives, filled with screens and schedules, are built upon foundations laid by people who watched shadows and waited patiently for the sun to tell them what to do. Goseck's whisper is a timeless lullaby, singing of cycles, of connection, and of the profound, simple beauty of looking up. The sun begins its slow descent in your mind's eye, painting the sky with hues of gentle orange and soft violet, just as it did for those ancient watchers at Goseck so long ago. You feel a quiet calm settle over you, a sense of deep peace that comes from understanding a little more about the vast, sprawling tapestry of human history. The whispers of Goseck, those soft, ancient echoes, now mingle with the gentle hush of the night, inviting you to let go of the day's busy thoughts. Allow the images of the circular earthworks, the timber posts, and the distant, twinkling stars to slowly, gently fade from your mind's eye. The job of the sun's circle is done for today, its silent lessons absorbed, its ancient secrets shared. There is nothing more to do, nothing more to learn for now. Just the quiet comfort of knowing that even in the deepest past, humanity reached for the stars, found order in the cosmos, and left behind a legacy of wonder. Let that sense of ancient peace, that deep, quiet understanding, wrap around you like a soft, warm blanket. Your mind is now free to wander, to dream, to simply rest. The world outside is quiet, and so, too, is the world within you. Just breathe softly, deeply. Let the gentle whispers of Goseck guide you into a peaceful, dream-filled slumber. All is calm. All is well.